momentarily. Maybe she's just delayed. So I will call the meeting of the Wenatchee School Board to order. The date today is March 23rd, 2021. And I would ask you all to stay muted while we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, or first on the agenda, we have our consent agenda. On the consent agenda this week, we have minutes from our regular meeting on the 9th of March, vouchers and payroll, personnel report, surplus report, contracts, enrollment and financial report, and the annual report of school district asset prevention program. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Maria?
Aye.
Julie?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
And Laura is aye as well. That motion passes. So next on our agenda tonight, we have citizen comment. It is my understanding that we have 28 people tonight who wish to comment. So thank you all for being interested in the public process. Want to remind you that each comment period is limited to 3 minutes. There is a clock on Kim White's screen, but if you can't see her, I'd ask that you use some kind of a timing device as you're speaking so that you can stay on track. When we get to 3 minutes, I will let you wrap up your sentence basically, but I will stop you after that, and out of respect to everybody so that we can all hear what each person has to say, we ask you to adhere to that 3 minutes. So
we do have, Laura, just so you know, I was able to find the sounds. So we do have some sound indicators, I believe, at the 2-minute warning and then again at the end. So
very
should
nice.
be able to come through again tonight.
Thank you so much. Okay, so who do we have first on the list this evening, please?
Okay, so I'll read the names and we'll do it a little bit different tonight to give Kim a little break in reading. So we're going to do some written ones in between the live ones. We'll just do them in order in which we received the comments.
Okay, great.
So the first up is Eloise Barshes.
Hi. So my name's Eloise Barshes and I live in East Wenatchee, and I'm the parent of a first and a third grader, and we're actually really grateful to choice into the dual language program at Lewis and Clark. So I appreciate the time and effort that's been put into collecting all this input from teachers and parents and staff, and I hope that this is actually just the beginning of this thorough effort to make sure that so much feedback is collected. So I wanted to start by saying that I support the comments and concerns that teachers and staff raised at the last school board meeting, and I agree with their concerns about the impact of yet another disruption on scheduling after such a long and challenging year. So I initially wanted to speak today about those concerns, but they said it, so I'm with them. I stand behind their recommendation to maintain hybrid learning through the end of the year. I also hear the concerns and challenges of parents they're raising, and I even see my own children struggling, but we're in a pandemic and this is a matter of public health. So decisions regarding public health should be rooted in science, not in public opinion. So as I'm sure you know, the health district is now reporting an increase in COVID-19 cases among the youth and young adults. So that's our students. It was going down and now it's going back up. And as you said last time, the sands are shifting underneath our feet every day. It's a moving target. You even said that you're getting conflicting advice about what's safe and what's not safe. This is a new pandemic and we're building the plane as we fly it, right? And so under the circumstances, I think Wenatchee School District has done an amazing job, and the current safety protocols are working. The hybrid model is working to keep our children safe in this pandemic. So thank you so much. And then finally, I just want to add that as our community is being bombarded with messages about the vaccine and how they keep our children safe and our community safe, for reopening. I just want to add that if the vaccine is an essential piece of our road to recovery, then I believe like every parent of a school-age child should have access to be fully vaccinated if we intend to fully reopen our school to 7,500 students. So is that possible to do now? I don't know, but I do know that it's possible in the fall. So it won't always be like this. And I think that the light at the end of the tunnel is getting even brighter, and we're getting so close. And we're going to know more about transmission and risk in the vaccinated world, like really soon, like this summer. And I want you to know that I think our students and our families are worth the wait. And I hope that you do too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ron, Nick?
Okay, next up, Emma Philly.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Emma Philly. I live in Wenatchee and I'm a registered nurse. I've spoken 3 times at these school board meetings. You guys probably recognize me now. This week, the CDC recommended 3 feet of space in elementary classrooms. California and Oregon have already adopted these guidelines. Teachers have been prioritized for vaccinations, and there have been over 24,000 people vaccinated in Chelan County alone. Our infection rate is low and stable. It's at 4%, and it's been that way for 3 weeks. Do you remember the ASB student representative from the high school that spoke in February? He said that there's little to no social distancing in the hallways. This infection rate is with the high school being in hybrid for almost 2 months. Where is the giant spike of COVID cases related to schools? There isn't any, even with little social distancing. Last meeting, 18 teachers spoke, and they said the same thing. It was like they were reading a script. School is great. Our students are catching up in the small class sizes. My son, unfortunately, is not sharing this experience. In hybrid learning, he is frustrated with the amount of time that he has to spend on the computer. His grades and his elective classes have dropped drastically because I'm not forcing him to do the work. He's crying angry tears of frustration. This is not the education that I want him to have. He's so distracted on the computer, and often he has to stand to work or take wiggle breaks. He has a little brother, and when he comes in the room, everything stops, and we have to start again and refocus, or we lose the network connection and all of the work that we've done, and we have to start over. I'm at home with him. I quit my job so that I could help him. But what about the other students that don't have the support they need? They're home babysitting younger siblings or with grandparents. Please don't be bullied by the teachers union. You make this decision based on science. There is no spike in COVID since the schools have opened, even with the little social distancing at the high school. Follow the CDC guidelines that 3 feet is enough space for safely. The children need to be in school full-time as soon as possible. Please give my son more time in school.
Thank you. Okay. Ron, who is
Okay,
next?
next up will be a written comment. I believe Kim is going to read that. The written comment is by Josh Philly.
All right.
Mhm.
Sorry. Okay, this is Josh Philly, a concern for teachers. We have a 7-year-old in the Wenatchee School District. He has been in person and doing very well. We appreciate all of our teachers in the Wenatchee School District. As we heard at the last board meeting, 18 of them spoke in their own voices, a seemingly similar narrative. Small classes, happier kids, knowing pet names. I must say, this is not the pulse of our community. There are teachers in our district that need to speak up about alternative unions that do not bully if they aren't all singing the same tune. There are teachers who genuinely want to teach full-time and signed up to be teachers to teach and see their classes succeeding. They love our children and know the suffering that has taken place with this drastic change that is attempting to be normalized. We must not accept this as normal. Board, you cannot accept this. And Dr. Gordon, you need to show us you are fighting for our kids in our community. I've been let down and saddened by the lack of community pulse felt by the board and the super the last few board meetings. Please prove me right to know that you have our small town best interest in mind to reverse the damage that has gone on for far too long to our young forming kiddos' minds. Increased obesity, addiction, suicidal tendencies, to name a few. Teachers, let's hear you. We know you are Wenatchee focused with a special heart for seeing kids of all ages come back to thriving in their classes. The journey is long ahead of us with obstacles unseen. Even if kids were in person tomorrow, there is a long, long road ahead of our community. Together we win.
Thank you, Josh. Next.
Okay, next up is Brian Hurling.
My name is Brian Hurling. I'm a teacher and a father of 4 in the Wenatchee School District. Several months ago, I made predictions about the trajectory of the COVID pandemic in our community. I have more than a simple understanding of the foundations of math, science, and public health necessary to look at all the data and analyze it. I had good data, created illustrated graphs, and charted relationships between many variables in an attempt to understand what lay in our future. And I was wrong. The only thing I was able to prove conclusively is that I was not an expert. That was a good thing to learn. That experience taught me to respect those in our world who have been tasked with being our experts. I was short-sighted to assume my understanding of a novel pandemic could supersede that of the experts. I was seeing the pandemic through my narrow vision. I put my bias and optimism ahead of my lack of expertise. In contrast, experts have the training, knowledge, and depth of experience to properly assess all of the data. It is their job to consult and advise. Each expert gives their explanation of the possible paths our leaders can take while navigating through these difficult waters. It is tempting to pick one expert and favor their conclusions above all others. That simplifies decisions, but it is not wise. Wisdom is found in considering all the experts and making the difficult decision on how to move forward. We are sailing between Scylla and Charybdis. Our numbers are rising again, where they had been falling for months. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, but at this point, it is uncertain if that is the next train or the light of a clear blue sky. Dear community, please let our administration and school board make this difficult decision and trust that they are doing so while trying to balance out the needs of all of our students, teachers, and community members while also considering what the present and future hold. They are being as transparent about all decisions as humanly possible and repeatedly, purposefully listening to you. Whatever their final decision, it will not be for or against any one group. They will make their decision with all of us in mind. They will be and are doing their best to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, our next one looks like the person is not here, so we're going to go on to our next one after that. It's a written comment from Blake Morrell.
Okay, Blake Morrell, Wenatchee School Board. Thank you for taking the time to hear my comments. My name is Blake Morrell, and I am a 2nd grade teacher at John Newberry Elementary School. I have been at Newberry for 5 years, and I am currently the 2nd grade team leader. I am writing to you to convey my feelings about bringing students back to school full-time. My opinion comes from a place of caring and knowledge about children and their well-being and development. I do not think bringing students back to school full-time is the right move for our students and families. This year has been full of uncertainty and change for our students, with fully remote learning in the fall to our current hybrid model with many other changes and shifts in between. We are months into our hybrid model, and only recently have I started to see students really lower their affective filters and truly engage in school and their learning. The last thing these children need is another change, especially with such little time left in the school year. The 2nd grade team at Newberry is in agreement that right now in our current model, students are fully engaging in rigorous learning. I have 24 students in total, 12 in each cohort, and right now we are able to take advantage of the small class sizes and really target student learning needs better than we'd be able to with double the size. I say double our class size, but if we bring students back full time, We fully expect to have more students join our classes as they shift back from the Wenatchee Internet Academy. This has already happened multiple times. With COVID cases now increasing in the Valley and the struggles we have put our students and families through this year, we should continue with our current model that instead of rolling the dice for the last few weeks of the school year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Blake.
Okay, next up, Shayna Morgan.
Hello, my name is Shayna Morgan, and I'm a current senior at Wenatchee High School. First of all, I would like to thank the school board for their careful consideration of this matter. Now, simply stated, I do not feel that returning to school full-time is the safest option for students. After looking through all of the safety precautions that would be sacrificed to come back full-time, I do not believe that is the right decision. Looking at just the high school, there are over 2,000 students that would be in the hall at one time. When passing periods happen, while they are short, the halls are overcrowded with students trying to get to their classes. During this time, it is hard to be even a foot away from another student, much worse than we see in hybrid learning. Going back to school would mean less health check standards and students sitting much closer to each other for a longer amount of time. Not to mention that during lunch, students will not be wearing masks and will be still sat less than 6 feet apart. As far as vaccines go, the majority of students are not able to get them due to age or phase restrictions. If a student does not feel safe, they have two options: either go to school full-time where they feel unsafe, or be put in a situation that they could possibly not be able to graduate, or for many students, possibly fail a class. While I can appreciate a survey being given to students, a survey with a simple yes or no answer is not enough to truly know why students do or do not feel safe going back. The answer to the question should we go back to school full time is not black and white, so it is not fair to provide only a black and white answer on the survey. Going back to school full time is not safe or wise decision to make right now. It requires much more time, consideration, and planning than what is left in this school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next up is Trina Morgan.
We're going to tag team. Well, first of all, I too would like to thank all of you and allowing me to have my 3 minutes of fame. But let's talk about something that, as a parent, that I'm very passionate about. And just kind of want to add to what Shayna has already said. But something was mentioned about bullying. I don't feel that this is a matter of bullying. This is a matter of potential life and death. Okay, so we take this very seriously. As we all know, the survey that has been sent out returned concerning the transition for hybrid to full-time, the survey goes on to list quite a bit of things that are currently taking place in the school: cleaning, hygiene, washing hands, all of that. That will literally go away based on the survey's information, literally go away and put more jeopardy. At least that's what it said in the survey. I took screenshots of it to make sure I understood it correctly. The vaccination that's out, there's only a 70 to 90% effective rate. And that's only been worth a year of trial and error. So we don't yet know the longevity of this whole situation. So that being said, I listened to Luke Davies, CDHD administrator, and he talked about today the 3 feet in elementary. And then he talked about the potential middle school and high schoolers still needing to stay 6 feet away and having the amount of over 2,000 kids and students in that situation. So that says something that he would bring that up to light. So this brings up valid points for many reasons, and I would like to talk about how that a child, we don't know yet, can be potentially a carrier. They don't know. So if that's the case and they bring it home to their family, we're talking a life and death situation that they're putting on the line of a parent, a grandparent. Not to mention, if they do contract it from that, then an MISC that can happen to the very child that brought it home. which is a severe situation. And I feel like it's a Russian roulette situation that I don't want to put my kids in. That's not an option for me. And nor is it for the kids, the majority of kids that we've talked to that are in those situations. And so I just would really plead that you guys reconsider this whole taking 1 month to transition them from hybrid that they're just getting used to and putting them into a full-time situation that will set them on edge anyway. And for the seniors and just the different things that it would impact, I don't think that it's worth the whole transition for 1 month. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next up, Candice Burton.
Hi there. Thank you for having me. My name is Candice Burton, and I'm a mother of 2 children. One of them is a 3rd grader at Washington Elementary, and the other is a 7th grader at Orchard Middle School. And my kids are happier than they have ever been. They are thriving in the hybrid model. Personally, if we had it our way, we would never go back. That to the side, I have been living with autoimmune disease for 10 years of my life. And in that time, I've had 2 major sicknesses. Luckily, I have bounced back in my health, but it does set you back extremely in your finances. And that's a hardship that I really wouldn't wish on anyone when the answer to that issue is as simple as getting a vaccine. Every single teacher and all these students have done such a good job rising to the occasion. And it seems like for 2.5 months, it's just not worth it. We all deserve to stay the course. We deserve to get our shots. We deserve to be healthy, and we deserve to repair and be ready for the fall. So I'm asking you all to just please stay the course. Let's be strong and tough this out and come together next fall for more success. Thank you.
Thank you, Candice.
We have a written comment now by Jordan Smith.
Okay, Jordan Smith. Our students must not be required to adjust to another schedule change simply for the sake of the appearance of progress. At the last board meeting, many teachers from several schools described how the smaller class sizes for the second half of the year are helping us to regain a great deal of the lost learning we are so concerned about. Our students are growing socially and emotionally, which is contributing to their academic success this year and in future years. We know this solution is not perfect. We know that quarantine has been stressful and lonely. Change is hard. Feeling alone is hard. An additional change will once again shake up our children's worlds, likely cause regression, and probably cause an outbreak that will force us to go backward in our reopening plan instead of forward. We should keep doing what we know works. We should plan to fully reopen in the fall when we can do so safely, and not before then when the risk is too great and the stress of change to both teachers and students is already too high.
Okay, next up, Arlette Lopez Rodriguez.
Good afternoon, school board members and community members. My name is Arlette Lopez, and as a senior at Wenatchee High School, I would like to voice my concerns about the equity issue within the proposal to return to school full-time. In the wake of COVID-19, the school board has not been as effective in reaching out to students and families of color and has not adequately demonstrated its espoused values of equity and accountability in this decision-making process. If this decision was being made without effectively reaching out to students and families of color, you have not fully met the needs of your constituents. I appreciated the community conversations that the administration organized in order to communicate with parents and students of color back in 2019. However, I expect more from all school board members. A simple yes or no survey does not suffice as community engagement. Many people are unable or unwilling to fill out an online survey, often due to lack of access or familiarity with technology. As public servants, it is your job to ensure the needs and desires of the public are met by constantly engaging in dialogue with students, parents, and community leaders, especially those who are rarely represented in the demographic of the school board. Partnership is one of your strategic priorities. I demand that my school district is transparent with what is truly a priority. Living up to a commitment to partnership means that we must prioritize interacting with local organizations that consists of parents and students of color. As a student, I not only expect transparency for my school district, but also consistency. Truly committing to the safety, mental health, and high quality of learning for all students does not look like pushing us into an overcrowded, unsanitary facility amidst an ongoing pandemic. It means listening to the voices of your students and remaining accountable to the needs of those who will be impacted by your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent job, by the way.
Next up is James Dodge.
Hi, my name is JT Dodge. I'm the ASB president and a senior at the WHS High School, and I live at 445 Lombard Lane up here in Sunny Slope. Today, I want to talk a bit about why I think we shouldn't go back to school, and I'll also voice some concerns I've heard from teachers and students around me. To start things off, some caveats. I'm just talking about the high school, and I'm going to avoid a lot of the COVID reasons. I think you guys have heard a lot of that already, right? So first off, reasons for me, first off, the transition to the full in-person schedule would happen just right before AP tests. And I fear that the kind of transition and getting used to fully in-person school would kind of eat into our ability to review for those tests. And then also on the same note, once AP tests are done, you don't really do as much in those classes. And so it seems like we're coming back just in time to do nothing. That of course is a blanket statement. Not all AP classes are like that. I also want to say I'm not sure how much impact 1 month in the case of seniors and a bit more in the case of the other grades will have. And then also for addressing some stuff on this survey, you guys said that windows and doors will be open. If you've been to the high school, you know we don't really have windows. We don't also have as many doors as we would like, right? For lunch, the school is already overcrowded, and so it's going to be extremely hard to really push any COVID regulations during that time of the day. I will admit it's a strong point to push to go back in person right now to set a precedent for next fall. However, I don't think the costs really outweigh the benefits when potentially we'll have a more vaccinated population and more knowledge on this virus at that point in time. Now I'll talk about some reasons I've heard from other people. But first off, I just want to say out of all the people I've talked to in the building, I've heard of one person, I haven't talked to one person who actually wants to come back actively. But most people don't see the point in investing so much time in a transition for so little time right at the end. One person even commented to me when I told him I was going to talk here that why switch up the schedule when we finally have something that's working. People are concerned with the lunch situation. They're also concerned with stamp tests and AP tests at this time. I have a couple friends who have jobs during the second half of the day that they've told me if we go back to full in person, they'll have to quit those jobs, which they're saving for college, obviously in my case, or senior's case, right? Furthermore, even with 3 feet, that's not really enough room in many of the classrooms, unfortunately. The school's just too small for all of us, right? And then once again, people have said there's no point in coming back for just a month, and people are kind of fed up with the schedule changes, right? So I know you guys have heard many of these points before, and you're probably going to hear a lot of them again, but I just want to say I've loved how receptive you guys have been to the voices of your community, and I hope you guys continue forward with that tradition into the future. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, JT. Okay.
Next up, Chelsea Mahuka.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Chelsea Mahuika, and I want to reference an article from the Wall Street Journal that this week said that hybrid is driving COVID cases up among youth. There's a study that has found that children are receiving more interaction outside of school, which is where the COVID cases are spreading. The CDC announced last week the change from 6 feet to 3 feet in schools. Of course, we all knew that's what they would end up recommending. They're just late to the party, like all of you. No reason to wait until you get your survey results back. No reason to wait until Washington, the last state in the nation to adopt the CDC guidelines, adopts this. No reason to wait until the end of April to get your students back full time. We all know you are buying time until June 12th. The writing is on the wall. Your students are struggling. Your families are struggling, and the community is struggling. Do not put this off. Hold class outside, hold it in the gym, hold it in the cafeteria, figure it out. You've had over a year to plan for this. We aren't asking anyone to put themselves at risk. The school has given options and people need to use them. I'm sure you have all heard by now that Cade Gebbers from Brewster committed suicide a week ago. A year ago, he took his team to the state championship game in basketball. And on Wednesday, he felt so much despair that he ended his young life. He was a boy full of potential and well-loved by his family and community. Don't let this happen to one more of our students. Do you really want the weight of this on your shoulders? You all heard the doctor letter that was read at the last school board meeting. School provides the opportunity for children to deal with their anxiety and depression, and that has been stripped away. You all know what Sean Ballard said about the mental health crisis in our own town. And of course, you all heard our governor say that we are experiencing a mental health crisis in Washington among our students, and every day counts. Children are struggling and hybrid is not working for students. And this is not all going to end when the school goes back in session full time. Get a parent committee together and we can figure this out if you can't. Invite all of your attorneys. I would love to talk to them about the risks they are facing about the school district being sued for denying children their basic life needs that the school provides. You all know that there are many children in our district who were or are not properly served with their IEPs, right? I've got a dozen messages from parents who have all had the same experience. If they all knew better, they would have filed a class action lawsuit against the district, just like many other parents have across the nation. In fact, in my Facebook group, there were multiple parents who were contacted immediately from the district as soon as they said that their children had not been served with their IEPs. The district knew that they were at fault. Quit worrying about an L&I complaint when you have children in our community suffering every day. Are you more scared to look good in front of adults, or are you more concerned about caring for our children? Because right now, I cannot tell. I listen very closely to hear how much you talk about children, and it is not much. I hear more about how hard teachers are working and how much they have had to pivot more than anyone else. And I get it. This is not easy for them, but this is their job. This is your job to figure this out. How many times does Dr. Gordon have to tell the school board that this decision is up to you? He has said it so many times that there still has never been a vote. June 12th isn't when this all ends for us. Jay Inslee said every day counts when it comes to the mental health crisis facing our children. I have spent the past 8 months putting my neck on the line to advocate for children. I speak to Latino families on a daily basis. I speak to families that are in poverty. I speak to working mothers. It has not been pretty for me. I have faced some serious harassment from a teacher in your district because of it. I was denied protection from a principal regarding this harassment. My own children have been affected by my advocacy. So how about you stick your neck out on the line and do what's best for children? I know this message might be difficult to hear. It's not fun to say. I know at this point, many of you have tuned me out. Go ahead, but don't tune out our children.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Next up, Denali Rojas.
Hello, I am Denali Rojas, a Wenatchee High School avid senior, taking 3 AP classes, member of FCCLA, mock trial, METRA, and the Wenatchee School District Strategic Planning Team. As a student and a member of this community, one of my greatest concerns has been whether the rules will be followed and the degree of safety we are able to implement as a whole. I would like to speak of my personal experience regarding this topic. I am part of a few clubs where we decided to remain online for the remainder of the year just because of safety protocols. However, there is a club where we decided to be much more physically present. And like other sports and clubs, we would get together for practices in different buildings. At the beginning, I felt that this was okay, that everyone would be following the rules and protocols. There is nothing to worry about. Safety was ensured. I thought this because the people participating were of public position of trust and authority, so customarily, I believe these people would uphold the rules. At these meetings, our leaders and the mentors and students whom I held in such high regard displayed behavior which did not uphold the district safety protocols. They would show up without masks, and they even wore their masks incorrectly. Even us participants were encouraged to take our masks off when giving our speeches. At the time, I did not know how to share how uncomfortable this situation made me feel. Over time, I conditioned myself to be okay with it and hide my anxieties. The thought of speaking up to these people and holding them accountable to the district's safety protocols intimidated me. Imagine seeing a police officer or your high school principal or your mayor not wearing their mask in a group of people. Who was I to tell authority figures to put on their mask and hold their students accountable? Now, I did not see a police officer or a principal or your mayor not wearing a mask. I want to make that clear. But the people that I did see not wearing a mask and failed to hold students accountable were no less authoritative figures. When I finally took the risk of sharing my fear with 3 fellow peers, they shared that they felt the same fears. They also shared that they felt just as intimidated. When I realized I was not the only person feeling this way, I felt so stupid for not having shared my concerns earlier in the season. Yet I also felt empowered to share it to you now. Not out of sense or need for punitive consequences, but out of desire for caution. If some of our highest and most respected authority figures cannot hold students accountable in small groups, how can we expect teachers and other staff members to be successful in holding students accountable when they're going to see 150 of us in a single day? Do not send us back to school full time. No student should feel afraid for their lives or be put in a position where they must choose between feeling respected by their mentors or doing the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Denali.
Next up, Rachel Petro.
Hi guys, good evening. My name is Rachel Petro, and I live here in Wenatchee, mom of 2 kids. Since there's been a lot of testimony so far, I just want to touch on a few things. First, my career has really been based in public policy, and I would just really encourage the school board from a communication standpoint to do a couple things. One would be, instead of having the public testimony up front, have it placed after the presentation and the information that you guys are all discussing, because it would be, my comments would be more relevant after hearing the information that's going to be given in Dr. Gordon's report later this evening. So that would just be one thing. And, you know, there's going to be other issues over time, hopefully besides the pandemic, that we get to deal with, right? And that might just facilitate a more constructive conversation, more accurate and timely input from the public that's participating in your meeting. That would just be one suggestion. The other is when folks email the school board, we get an automated email back that says that somebody's going to get back to them in a time certain. I would just recommend acknowledging that, because folks are not getting this response within the time frame that is articulated in those emails. So those would just be a couple things that might help facilitate goodwill and better communication among the community, which I know you guys want. So then a couple more things. Thank you for doing the survey. I agree with some of the other speakers tonight that it was a 1-question survey. Felt a little bit slanted with the choices up front, but I'm super anxious to see what those results are. And my ask tonight is just a couple of things. Will you, the school board, make a public declaration that your goal is to get our kids back into full-time school as soon as possible? We know that the data and the science is changing. We've heard a lot about that tonight, right? We know that California and Oregon and the CDC and others are making the decision to move forward with 3 foot. We don't know what the governor's gonna say. We know that he might say something this week, right? We know that our health director, our medical director, has asked the state for us to be able to pilot 3 feet. Let's get our kids back in school as safely as we can. If we can do that with elementary first, let's do it. There are a lot of people on here. I would love to my kids to be in your kids' classrooms, because my kids are not thriving under this model. In regard to another disruption, I think Eloise spoke out eloquently to that. There has been disruption every single month, every single week. I mean, phases have changed. They've morphed more than 3 times. Different, and the business community has had to shift, all the while having to shift with, you know, kids at home, etc. So I know it's hard, been doing it myself, but we can do it. We must do it. We've got to look beyond the risk of the virus. We have to look at the full perspective of all the other risks which have been mentioned tonight. The long-term consequences are real. So I just want to ask you guys to proactively say that you're for our kids getting back to school full time. We haven't heard that. The community just hasn't heard it. So I know my time's up. So please begin planning our return to the classroom. Thanks.
Thank you, Rachel.
Next up is a written comment. Kim will read from Jennifer Creek.
Okay, as a parent and educator, I feel the board needs to err on the side of caution when making the decision to move to full day school day. Students are already benefiting from in-person instruction. A move to full day drastically impacts the learning environment, especially at this time of the year. Not only will students be adjusting to a full classroom and large teacher to student ratios, but spring is a common time for increased behavior issues. Smaller numbers are allowing for better intervention with learning gaps. We will impede forward progress by making yet another change in an already tumultuous year. Save the changes for the fall and let the kids finish the year with predictability, and honor your staff by keeping your word to remain at the current arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
And Tina Brown.
Hello, school board and Dr. Gordon. I am here to speak to you in two capacities. The first as a teacher and representative with the Wenatchee Education Association. As members of the association, we had the opportunity to respond to a one-question survey. Although we had about 24 hours to respond, I wanted you to know what the question was. The question stated, do you support full-time in-person learning model for the remainder of the school year? Your options to select were yes or no. 85% of the teachers who took this survey said no, they are not in full support of returning full-time. And only 15% had responded with a yes. So although I teach at WIA and very happy to do so, I do still communicate with my colleagues that are working in a traditional classroom. And I've asked them to give me some examples of what is making them uncomfortable. And here are a few things that they've told me. They are very concerned that if going back full-time, not only will that increase the number of students in their classroom, but that in turn decreases the amount of time that they will have for hand washing. Another safety measure that will no longer be offered if going back full-time is daily temperature checks. Teachers are also really worried about kids being in masks for the first time for approximately 6.5 hours, since now they would be asked in full-time learning to wear their masks out at recess as well. They are very scared for their staff that work close by, their classified staff. These members would be in a lunchroom setting with students who are not wearing masks for a good portion of their lunchtime. Staff members are finding themselves already spending most of their days looking around to see who may not be feeling well. Why do you have a headache? Did you say your stomach hurts? And the biggest thing that scares them the most is losing time, having to take 1 to 2 weeks to create new learning around routines, not just routines in academics, but routines around safety. Not to mention the fact that these students for the first time will be in a room together. Now, as a parent, my husband and I are concerned for our daughter. She has been in remote and then hybrid. And during that time, she's even had 2 different teachers. We've adjusted our work schedules and we've adjusted our daughter's schedule so that she can be the most successful that she can be. We would like you to please not change what is put in place now, not only for the staff, but also for our own child.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay, we have, looks like 4 written comments in a row. So from Kim, and the first one will be from Matt Van Bogart.
Okay. From Matt Van Bogart. What's it going to take for this school board and school district to take action and get our kids back to ski in person and full time? I think he might have meant to say school in person and full time. Here we are again, another monthly board meeting, more depression, more suicides, more learning loss, and this board and district continues to be paralyzed by indecision. Kids in this valley are tired of being ignored and weaponized, but yet science evolves. New CDC guidelines for 3-foot social distancing, teacher vaccines, mitigation tactics, and still this board and district have not presented any plan that supports in-person full-time instruction for our suffering children. Parents and the community have engaged. We've presented facts, stories, examples, data, and science. We've extended offers to partner. We've offered time, skills, resources. We've advocated for children across the community, and what have we got in return? Nothing. Zilch, nada, goose egg. We've received no plan, no outline, nothing that demonstrates this district has a command of the situation and a plan to get our children back to school and recovering from learning loss, depression, and isolation. When basic questions go unanswered, we feel ignored, belittled, and patronized. Toxic environments like this always lead to the top. Dr. Gordon needs to resign. He no longer has the support and confidence of the community.
Next up, another written comment from Shane Rennie.
Okay, is Candice Burton there? I think I showed her next, Ron. Is that right? No?
Candice already went.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she
Okay.
had a couple duplicate entries.
Got it.
She's already
Okay.
gone. I think we have one more in-person comment after a couple more written.
Okay, so Shane Rennie's next. I'm a parent and a reading intervention teacher at Washington Elementary. I am asking the board to strongly consider returning our students for full-time learning. Sharing my thoughts tonight comes with added worry as many of my colleagues share differing views. Hybrid learning answered a need to protect our health, but it is time to rethink where we are and why we are making the decisions we are as a district. What I do know is that our students, including my own child, are missing out socially and academically. The progress being made with the online programs cannot compete with what can happen when students are learning with teachers in person. After seeing the results from a recent teacher union survey, it was heartbreaking to learn the vast majority of teachers are not wanting to bring students back to school full time. I cried because I am sad for my daughter, for many students who need us, and the divide this is creating in our schools and community. The concern has shifted from health and safety to class size and not wanting one more change. What if this one more change reconnects students with teachers and adds the needed energy and spark to finish the year strong despite the challenges we've had? What if this one more change fills the learning gap for a student because they have the time and support to learn and work through a concept that was holding them back? What if this one more change brings joy, health, and hope through art, music, library, and PE? What if this one more change brings a smile to a student's face and happiness in their heart because they aren't trying to manage this on their own? What if this one more change is the hope we need to bring us back together as a united community? What if this one more change saves a student's life who is feeling there isn't hope because isolation has taken a toll on them mentally and they are able to hide the darkness when they aren't in school?
Okay, hopefully Kim's got a glass of water there. She's got a couple more of these.
Yeah, I'll take a quick sip.
So Kaylee
Okay.
Smith is the next
Kaylee
written
Smith.
comment.
I teach 8th grade at Orchard. The stress of even contemplating such one more unnecessary change this year is absurd. The teachers and students are overwhelmed and exhausted. We don't have the means to keep the mitigation strategies in place that we were so adamant were keeping our buildings safe. Yet even with these strategies, our numbers have constantly risen recently. The in-school numbers are currently more than double that of the community and rise daily. We are not ignoring our duties to our students. We are working ridiculously long hours, insanely hard, and in our most creative ways. We are constantly adapting teaching styles, and one more schedule change would put an enormous stress on the already exhausted teachers and education staff. Our kids are worn out and overwhelmed by the idea. Almost every student asked me today if we knew what was happening. It was not with glee in their voices. It was with concern and apprehension. They don't get the vaccine. They know the community numbers are on the rise. They are nervous. They have the same level of a concern that our kids had last March when we started hearing the worrisome newscasts. Our kids are stressed. It would behoove us to listen. It would be reasonable to return to full-time when husbands can join wives at prenatal appointments. Our doctors aren't even comfortable with a single extra person for 15 minutes. Why would we be comfortable putting so many people together for hours in a school day when all have access to the vaccine and adequate time, not weeks, to decide if the data shows it to be safe for them? When our numbers are not increasing, when I don't receive so many emails in a day about kids in quarantine that I am nervous to read my email, when school board meetings return to in-person gatherings, it is not yet reasonable. The idea of returning full-time before fall 2021 is a selfish stress inducer to the majority of the community. We must listen to the majority. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay,
And one
next,
more
I
written
think
one.
Lalani Purdom, is that who you have, Ron?
Yep.
Okay, please, let's start this again. Keep forgetting. Please allow our children to return to full-time in-person school. Remote learning has gone on long enough, and there's plenty of science and data to support the conclusion that it is safe for our children to return. It is safe for teachers and the community at large. It will be more detrimental to the children's mental health and future growth by not returning now. The small overall risks no longer outweigh the vast benefits.
Okay, so we have an in-person who has been super patient waiting through all the, Lorna Rosen. There we go. I see you unmuted. If you have a video, that'd be great. So you show up on the screen.
You're not letting me start it.
All right, let me do that for you. How about that?
Sweet.
There we go.
All right. Hello, everyone. So I'm here to advocate for a return to in-person school. I have 2 children, one of whom is a second grader in the district. And I think of the definition of utilitarianism, and that is actions are right if they benefit the majority, AKA doing the least amount of harm to the least amount of people. Seems reasonable, right? Well, right now we are doing the greatest harm to the greatest amount of people. For each reason you give not to return to full-time in-person instruction, I'm sure there are plenty of parents here tonight or those that are watching who would give you 2 reasons. To the parents and caregivers who would choose not to send their kids back in person due to medical vulnerability, etc., I see you. You want to protect your family. I dig it. And there's got to be room for you. There's got to be a solution here. I am tired of this choice being made for me. I am tired of a virus that has lower than a 1% hospital rate and an even lower mortality rate, dictating the most important piece of my second graders' emotional and social life right now. I don't understand how someone's medical vulnerability precludes all children from going to school. It also bears mentioning here that suicide has a 100% mortality rate. COVID is already leaving a wake behind it, a wake of lost jobs, increases in crime, mental health crises, and suicide among youth, and of course, lost learning. These things will last a generation long after COVID is a distant memory. Let's get these kids back in school, and please stop the hemorrhaging. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, have we reached the end?
And two more written comments. Kim will read them. First one is by Abby Danko.
As a high schooler, I believe we should not return back to full-time in-person school. By the time we would return to full-time instruction, seniors would only have 6 weeks of school remaining and all other grades 7 weeks. It will be 2 weeks before AP exams, something that us high schoolers are already stressing out over, and the added stress of our schedules and routines changing once again this year will be detrimental. If one thing is for certain, it's that we do not need more changes. If we return to a traditional schedule, students are going to get burned out and scores and grades will drop. We are used to what we have. We are used to half days with plenty of time to complete schoolwork in the other parts of our day. We are used to having more free time, being able to de-stress and not hyper-focusing on school for over 8 hours a day. With such a short time left in the school year, is it really worth the endangerment of students and their families who have not been able to get vaccinated? Wait until next school year. Wait until the entire community has had the opportunity to be vaccinated. Waiting will not be detrimental to our learning. We need some sort of stability in a year full of chaos and changes. Please do not add to the chaos. Keep things how they are.
Thank you.
And then lastly, sorry, Ron. Jennifer Newman. To the members of the school board, I realize you have a complicated decision to make regarding the school schedule and that you are feeling a lot of pressure from different parties as to how to proceed. As a parent, I have a couple of concerns. First, how are you going to manage to have children eat safely during the school day? If we return to school full time, the new CDC guidelines allow for children to be at least 3 feet apart in the classroom while they are masked. But these do not apply to eating when they will need to be further apart. My second concern is that the students have already had to adjust to 2 different schedules this year, and it seems unreasonable to ask them to adjust to a 3rd schedule, especially at a point when they only have 6 weeks remaining in the year. I appreciate your time hearing my comments. Thank you.
Thank
you. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, everybody who took the time to visit with us and express your opinions and concerns. They are a valuable part of the public process, and we do appreciate it. So moving on, this evening, we will be going to our next agenda item, which is discussion of reopening schools.
Thank you, Laura. And I too want to echo what you said. Appreciate all the different comments from students, community members, staff, and students. Appreciate everybody's time and giving their perspective. I'll share my screen now. Assume everybody can see purple and white screen now.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you, Ron. All right, so this is our Smart Restart school update for this evening. So again, the same goals all the way through since the start of the pandemic is to safely return our students to our schools, given the many known benefits of in-person learning. That has been our commitment. We commit to continuous evaluation of the reopening work as the nature of the pandemic and the medical knowledge continues to evolve. And it has just recently. We continue to make the best decisions that take into account all of our 7,600 students, our 1,200 staff members, and the thousands of parents in the community that we serve. Those have continued to be the principles in which we want to make the best decision for our community. So why are we studying a return to full-time learning? Indicators for the study for full-time readiness. The staff have been offered vaccine and our community transmission rates were declining, as highlighted by a few speakers tonight. That rate has started to go back up. Continues to be our intention to return to full-time instruction. I know I heard one or two people ask, what is our intention? That is absolutely our intention, to return to full-time instruction. Full-time in-person learning is in the best interest of the majority of students through this. There have been some students who've really thrived in our WIA, and that's something that we'll continue to look at. But we recognize the vast majority of our students will do better in a full-time in-person learning situation. The study has been necessary to fully understand what is required to safely facilitate the full-time learning, whether now or in the fall. And this includes purchasing, staffing, educational resources, and support. We must follow the current guidance and study the feasibility of the implementation of that guidance. We must understand the learning preference of parents, staff, and students, and that's what we'll talk about. But I want to highlight something that is critical for our board and for our community. This comes right out of Governor Jay Inslee's emergency proclamation. Additionally, until there is broader distribution of effective vaccine, effective treatment, or herd immunity, it is crucial and therefore ordered that school implement and require all personal protective behavior set forth in the K-12 schools 2020-21 guidance documents. The long and short of this is we are under the governor's order to continue following the current K-12 schools 2020-2021 guidance documents. Now, CDC has made a change. All of us are hearing rumblings that the Washington Department of Health may be changing those guidelines. I know local health officials are in support of that change to reflect what the CDC is indicating. But the reality is the board, the school district need to be following that order, that current order of guidance, which is 6 feet, and all the other LNI and DOH requirements that are in that guidance. There have been some schools who, because of their size of their classrooms or number of students in their elementary schools, have been able to return to more of a full-time instruction. That's not possible here. We've demonstrated that in prior meetings around the 6 feet. I don't know a school district in the state of Washington who's not following the current 6 feet guidance. Examples that have been given by other school districts, those school districts are following that 6 feet guidance. Here are some of the new CDC recommendations. Again, these recommendations have not been adopted by the Washington Department of Health, but here are some of the ones for elementary schools. CDC recommends all students remain at least 3 feet apart in classrooms where masks use is universal, regardless of whether the community transmission is low, moderate, substantial, or high. And those are the categories that they've listed in their indicators for community transmission. Middle schools and high schools, CDC recommends students should be at the 3 feet. Again, similar to the elementaries, where the difference is where transmission is low, moderate, or substantial. They've removed high from where the elementaries were. So if a community has high transmission, they recommend that you stay to the 6 feet. Using cohorting, maintain 6 feet of distance between cohorts where possible, limit contact between cohorts in areas of substantial, in that orange, and they're talking about the rate of transmission or high levels of community transmission. Schools that use less than 6 feet between students and classrooms, cohorting is recommended with at least 6 feet maintained. So an important data point to this slide is the 3/22/21 Chelan County is 110 per 1,000, and that's a 7-day because that's what the CDC is looking at, which would be considered high per CDC. Continuing the CDC, there are areas, as indicated by some of our community members and parents and students, where CDC still recommends 6 feet, and that's between adults in the school building and between adults and students in common areas such as lobbies and auditoriums, when masks can't be worn, such as when eating, during activities when increased exhalation occurs, such as singing, shouting, band, practice, sports. These activities should be moved outdoors or to large, well-ventilated spaces in community settings. So just as a reminder, even with the CDC, there are still some 6 feet guidelines that we need to be following. So the full-time learning feasibility study, the return to learning, it really was the evaluation of what is necessary to reopen our schools full-time for K-12 students using the 3-foot social distancing. Personnel. I'm going to talk about the staffing, turnover and leaves, schedule changes, recruitment and retention, sub coverage, and staff survey. Staff, turnover, and leaves. Currently, the classified staff members, we have 12 special education paras that resigned. So those still need to be filled. Classified staff or certified staff. In our survey, one of the questions that we did ask were, would you consider taking a leave? And of certified staff, so this is like our teaching staff, 41 staff, possible leave of absence for the remainder of the 2021 school year. The summary for this: would need to hire and train special education paras. Certificated staff could fill with certificated admin and other non-classroom staff. So if that many certified staff members went out on leave, it would have a significant impact in the organization. Again, can we make this happen? Yes, but it will be backfilled with different individuals filling different roles in our organization, as from admin to many other job responsibilities. Schedule change to facilitate the transition from hybrid to full in-person learning. Some students will experience a change in teacher assignments. Teachers may need to move to different classroom spaces or experience changes in their enrollment. So this really ties back to the last slide. So if we did have, even if we didn't have 41 classroom teachers take the leave, even if we had 10 to 15, there will be 10 to 15 new teachers throughout our organization working with our students over these next few months. So my whole purpose and the cabinet's purpose for presenting this to the board is that the board is really eyes wide open to what are possibilities as we go down this road. The other pieces of the change, again, will be, I apologize, I'm just going to move on to the recruitment and retention. We're working hard to make sure that we're recruiting and retaining our staff or new staff coming in. We've doubled down on recruitment efforts for bus drivers. We've resulted in 4 new trainees. On the downside, after training some of our drivers and then getting the correct certificate, our employees are being recruited by other employers. So that's a little bit of a disappointment. But we're rolling out a 3-week marketing blitz on radio, TV, mailings, and billboard. We are all over the place. You've probably heard our ads. We've been doing that for prior 2 weeks, but we have a bigger blitz going on right now. And it's basically, we're hiring to fill all openings. Staffing needs will change with the move to full-time. The survey results overall, it's 57 certified and classified staff members have indicated that they'll request the leave if the district returns to full-time in-person learning. Our summary: we are aggressively recruiting for all positions. If we are not able to hire additional staff, or if a number of our current employees take leave, it will be very challenging to fully open our schools. Subs are necessary for teachers, office staff, paras, bus drivers, and operational staff. These are critical positions and help us continue to keep our school district open and operating. In a normal year, it's super difficult to maintain a consistent sub pool. And during the pandemic, that has become even more challenging. And we're talking about subs for all positions. Operational and instructional are not being filled. Scheduled leaves, i.e. the maternity leave that Kelly Lopez spoke about a couple of weeks ago, that still can't be filled. We still have COVID-related leaves. So the ripple effect in the system is custodians, bus drivers, nutritional service pairs, and certified staff members. They are what makes our school district open and be able to deliver the incredible services that we do on a daily basis. And it's, again, from our bus drivers to our classroom teachers, all making a big difference, but we need them in their positions. The summary of this: we need more qualified substitutes for all positions to ensure that we can operate. The operational study, again, every department is committed to doing what it takes to support students. So this is about transportation, nutritional services, and our custodial piece. Transportation, return to full-time in-person learning should work for transportation. However, it's going to require 28 or 29 routes. Currently, the district has 23 contracted drivers with 2 presently on leave. We have subs, we have 9 total, but 4 who have actual flexible schedules, meaning they can work any day, anytime. There are 4 substitutes currently being trained, 2 to 3 other transportation staff. The secretarial director mechanics will need to cover routes on a regular basis due to the lack of enough contracted drivers. Summary: transportation will work, but daily staffing will determine if students will arrive on time. Nutritional services, just FYI, nutritional services since the beginning of the pandemic has prepared over 800,000 meals, and that's breakfast and lunch for our community. These are big ones. New CDC requires K-12 social distancing while eating. Full-time would require double the production of meals, breakfast and lunch. And what that means is currently breakfast and lunch is in one bag. That's not what would occur. So it's just more time for our nutritional services team. Meals would still be on the grab and go style, served on a tray, and allow us to use the planned and purchased inventory. Kitchens are using cafeteria space for meal prep. So again, this is a big operation. This is very different than what we're currently doing because it's still trying to create grab and go bags for our students. So the cafeteria is still being used as a prep area. Nutritional services is down 4 positions currently. 2 are on leave of absence, and the director is filling the role of the driver. Put this in there that everybody is trying to fill every role humanly possible to make what we're doing currently work. Free community meal services will be suspended unless able to hire additional staff. Nutritional service currently has 1 consistent sub available. Summary: we can feed our students, but it will take a minimum of 8 additional staff to make it happen daily. Custodial: we're short on custodial subs. Only 2 people have applied over the last 4 months. Staff were working roughly 8 hours, each day. Some then do another 4 hours of overtime to cover basic school cleaning in the absence of our subs. Custodial staff will need some time to move tables, chairs, and desks back into the classrooms and move any non-essential items out. Summary: current staffing is able to handle the daily workload. The only issue is the time needed to get classrooms set up. This would impact their daily work and then the limited subs to bring in to help. Our facilities: space evaluation, alternative facility space, and airflow and filtration. Overall, the 3-foot social distancing will work for the majority of classrooms to allow the whole class to fit into their current classrooms overall. Currently, given our present furniture configuration, there are a number of classrooms across the district where the number of students exceed our space, the 3-foot square footage of the room, and the number of students in the classroom. The overflow of students will need to be moved into a new class with a new teacher and or moved into a non-traditional teaching space. So this is where, again, if I have 28, 30 students in a classroom, and again, the square footage of the room does not match up with the 3-foot social distancing, we either need to find a new place for that room or for that classroom to be, or we need to take some of the students from that classroom and combine them with another classroom. So that's where our students had the potential of seeing different having a different teacher for the remainder of the school year. These are hard to hire positions, high school math and science. So if any of these things have to happen and they happen to be a high school math or science classroom where we're having to split, it will be extremely difficult to hire qualified teachers to fill these roles. Additional issues, some parents indicated that they would not send their elementary or middle school students back to school for full-time in-person learning. If all of these students made the choice to move to WI, we could not sustain this move. So we know we have a great online academy, and I'm super proud of our principal, Jennifer Devereux, all of the teachers, the support staff, everybody over there. But every time we have students move from our current model over into the WIA, we move staff with them. So that is going to be a change. I want everybody just to know that there are going to be shifts in who your potential shifts. Not trying to overhype this, but there could be potential shifts in our kids' teachers, our kids' current teachers, when we're making some of these changes. The district would need to move teachers who are currently teaching in the hybrid model to WIA. This would impact those current classrooms. With the 6 feet distancing, breakfast and lunch will be very challenging. We're working through all the issues. Mark Helm is literally at our buildings each and every day, just trying to find the best way to do this possible. We're purchasing additional outdoor tables to accommodate more students eating outside. This is a fair weather solution only, but we're working to make sure that this can work. Airflow and filtration. New research has demonstrated the importance of airflow and filtration to sustain a safe and healthy environment. The district has purchased portable air filtration systems for classrooms that do not have windows that open. These filters come with HEPA filters, able to filter up to a 0.3 micron. The COVID virus is generally a 0.5 micron. So into the staff surveys, and I 100% hear people who were somewhat frustrated. I didn't hear a whole lot, but some people were frustrated with all the surveys, feeling like they weren't able to give a comment or there weren't enough choices. It really was on purpose that we're giving binary choices. We needed to understand where people were at when we really pushed them into this conversation about, do they want for staff to come back from a parent's perspective? We were purposely pushing a binary choice in this because we need to know now. We need to know those numbers and not, I kind of feel good about it or I kind of don't feel good about it. That's not helping us when we're trying to make these bigger decisions of staffing, the finance, where do kids fit? So again, I hear everybody. I had a few emails, had a few people reach out. They were frustrated with the survey, but I honestly believe as we present this data, that it actually is doing exactly what we needed it to do. It was done purposefully, and I think that the data in return is coming back to give cabinet and others quality information. So this is the staff survey. So this is.
I'll talk. You going to talk about the numbers, Paul, or you want me
please.
to?
No, I'd rather you so I can drink.
All right, so just the first slide on the staff survey, just wanted to give a representation of the responses we got. And we got very good response for the survey. As you can see, that's the number of staff members per site who responded to the survey. This was all done via closed survey emailed to them. So they got to fill one of these out each. And so that we were very controlled in that. So you can go to the next slide. The main question on the survey around supporting their return to full-time in-person learning. As you can see, 35% supported that return, 65% did not support that return. This is all staff. This does include classified and certified and all categories of staff. Paul alluded to this question earlier where we talked about people requesting a leave. We did have 57 staff members say that they would intend to take a leave. Now, obviously that number might not hold, but that is who reported they would intend to take a leave if we went to full-time in person at the end of April. As far as the parent survey we ran this online for a week. And then after the online portion, we did receive a really good representation this year, or this offering for our online, but we then wanted to call even more parents to make sure we had student bodies. So we had over 3,200 parents represented in the survey. And they represented over 5,800 students. Most of our parents have multiple students. So they were able to fill one of these out for their 1 to 6, 7 students in some cases. So we had a very good representation compared to our student body and our parent body. What you will notice in this first chart, and I did call it out with the little box there, we do have some buildings where you will see some student data that looks like there's more representation than the population of the building. And I will be very transparent. That is because there are many parents that have multiple parent and guardianship of students. So we allowed every parent or guardian to fill this out. So if a student had a parent or guardian who might be living in different households or have different values, they were able to each fill that out. So each parent was able to voice their opinion. So you will see some of the buildings a little bit higher than the population of the building, which does make sense because many of our families potentially might be split between households. But that's the raw numbers. And then in terms of some demographics, we felt this doesn't exactly represent our demographics, but it came really close this time in representing our Hispanic and Latino families as compared to our non-Hispanic and Latino families represented by this survey. So you can see 58% on the non-Hispanic Latino side and 42 on the Hispanic Latino side. Same chart broken up by site. You can look at the colors to know that the non-Hispanic is the yellow. The Hispanic Latino students represented are the blue. So you can look at how much blue or how much yellow is from that school to kind of get a picture of the overall representation from that particular building. And getting down to the supporting question, put these in 3 pie charts just to give you perspective. We allowed the parents to answer this question based on the level of their student because there potentially could be differing opinions on the level of their student. And as you can see, there was. For the elementary students, we had about 20% of parents who did not supporting return to full-time, 79% did. As you jump it to the middle school level, 25% did not, 75% did to support returning. And at the high school level, 33% did not support returning and 67% did support returning. So a little bit of a difference at each level.
And Ron, this is when we force the choice.
Yes, yeah, I know some parents did comment about that. We did force the choice. It was a binary choice. We did collect some more data on the I do not intend side. We're not sharing that tonight, but we're happy to build a report for the board. We did ask some additional questions around since you are not intending to support this or send your students, what will you be doing? Will you be withdrawing? Will you be homeschooling? Will you be finding another choice? What will you be doing as a parent? And we did allow a text comment on that for those in addition. Next slide, a little bit different. Oh, there should have been.
Yeah, that was the one you were on. You were just.
Oh, so yeah, they looked really similar. Can you back up one slide? Yeah, so this one, just a little bit different bent on the question. We felt like we wanted to get a stronger, are you intending to send your students or not if we make this jump? And so the percentages were obviously smaller, but we did have a small percentage between 10 and 16% who did say they would find another avenue for their students. And most of those indicated withdrawing of some kind, whether that was to homeschool or to some other online program that they can find available. Sorry about that, Paul.
No, you're good.
And the student survey, right after the parent one, we did a student survey during the school day. We tried to get all of our 6th through 12th grade students to answer the survey. We had over 2,700 respond over those 3 days. And this was the demographic breakdown of those student responses. So 46% non-Hispanic Latino students and 54% Hispanic and Latino students. And again, just to give you an idea of the buildings, that same demographic across each site. And you can see the breakdown of just the survey data responses. And then they had a very, very simple survey. It was one question. Do you support returning to full-time at the end of April or not? And 55% do not at the 6th through 12th grade level, where 45% do. And that same breakdown again by site. Oh, my schools got cut off a little bit at the bottom, but they are identical. That's not your fault. That's where the chart is on the page.
Okay.
So that goes Wenatchee High School. Let me just read them just to make sure, and then we'll fix that slide. It goes Wenatchee High School on the left. Pioneer Middle School is the next one listed. Foothills Middle School is the next one with 465 results. Orchard Middle School with 348. And then Westside High School and Wenatchee Internet Academy are the last two.
So as we talk about those pieces, there are some financial implications. The district has one-time COVID relief funds to assist with reopening the COVID-related expenses that are related to COVID. We've had 1, 2, and now we've just, we haven't received it, but we have the 3rd round of the reopening COVID dollars. Parent Garden survey indicates that, again, 590 students may withdraw from May through June. The financial impact is $1.28 million for that May to June enrollment. Again, we don't believe that all 590 of these students would withdraw, but we want to make sure the board is wide-eyed and understanding there are implications for all these choices that families have to make. So in summary, the governor has ordered that all K-12 schools must follow the current Washington state reopening guidelines that include the social distancing of 6 feet. And that's what's occurring across the state of Washington. CDC has updated their social distancing guidance to 3 feet, and local officials, Dr. Butler included, support the 3 feet social distancing. However, Washington state order is related to the Washington Department of Health, not CDC at this time. If Washington Department of Health aligns with CDC guidance, we can make the return to full-time learning happen. However, without our classified and certified staff, a return to full-time in-person learning will face significant challenges. And our greatest resource to meet the needs of our incredible students is our human resource, which is our people. All to say, as I started this and as I end this, is yes, do we believe that in-person learning is the best for a vast majority of our students? Absolutely. Can we do this? We can, but it will be on a day-to-day basis where we're at with our staffing. Where do we find the people to do some of these? If a number of staff members take leave, that's going to be a significant impact on our organization. And some students, maybe not a significant amount, but some students will have different teachers for the end of the school year. But can it happen? Yes. Yes, it can. Are we ready to do it? We will be ready, as I've indicated to the board and to others. For us, it is really around that April 19th, because it goes to that April 19th to April 26th. It really goes to, that's when our staff who've been offered the vaccine would be fully vaccinated. They had 3 they have the Pfizer, which takes 3 weeks between shots, and then 2 weeks for full immunity from there, which gets us to that April 19th, April 26th. That is what we would be looking at as our start date. So with that, board, I'm sure you may have some questions.
Yeah. So I want to ask one first. You know, we talked about in your survey how many students would withdraw if we return to full-time learning. I wonder about the corollary question to that, which is, you know, how many are we going to lose if we don't do it? Because I think there will be some loss experienced. And of course, that's not a question I expect you to have answers to right now, but I would like to have some quantification of that. And also, I personally just want to apologize to the public if our message has not been clear. It has always been this board's intention to safely return to full-time instruction as soon as allowable and possible. Some of us have different ideas about when and how that might happen, but it is our intention and desire to return students to full-time instructions, because I don't think there's a one of us who believes that's not a benefit to students and families. And I want you to know that board members have advocated for teachers and school staff to be included as eligible recipients for the current vaccines, and that has happened as a result of not just us on our board, but you know, statewide board members advocating for the health and safety of students and staff. As a matter of fact, some of us received today a letter from the Washington State School Directors Board of Directors, who unanimously agreed to write a letter to the governor and the secretary of the state of the Department of Health here, advocating that the governor would adopt the CDC guidelines as the state's guidelines. And so our state organization is fully in support of transitioning to those CDC guidelines. They also asked for clarification of high risk workers after vaccination, and have asked for clear guidance from the governor and the Department of Health for required safety measures in the fall of 2021. We are required to follow the guidelines of the governor, who uses the Labor and Industries and the Washington State Department of Health guidelines. And so we are obligated as an organization to stay committed to those guidelines. So it is our advocacy to the governor to give us guidelines that to change when we can make that change. So you heard about the logistical challenges presented by the superintendent. Those are real. I would encourage us as a staff and an organization not to make those immovable barriers, and to also maintain some creativity for how we might overcome those when the opportunity arises.
Absolutely, Laura. And I appreciate your statement, because we include that statement in every one of our presentation. It is our full intention. And when I say that, I'm also speaking about the board. It has been our full intention to bring back students safely into our buildings as soon as possible. Other board members?
Well, I just have a couple questions about this survey first.
And I'm going to ask Ron too, because he's going to be more of the survey guru. So Ron, if you just come onto the screen. Sorry, Julie.
No, that's fine. So although there may be pieces that you're better suited to answer, when we talk about the potential funding loss for students who may withdraw, although I'm happy to see that most would still send their students, does that account for those who would go to WIA? Because my understanding is we get funding for those who go to WIA, correct?
Correct. And I did ask that question. Because when I started looking at those numbers on Friday, they started kind of lining up that said, boy, that looks pretty similar to a WIA enrollment. So I pushed Jeanette and Ron to really look through that. So Ron?
Yeah, so the answer choices actually, it was to withdraw from Wenatchee School District and enroll in another online program, or withdraw from Wenatchee School District, period, or homeschool.
Did they?
We didn't on this survey give them a choice to switch to WIAA, just for that reason of trying to differentiate between those families who might want to make that choice.
But did they maybe understand that that's what was being asked? That did they associate WIA with withdrawing from the district?
Yeah, that I can't answer for them, but we tried to be as really clear as we could. It did say withdraw from Wenatchee School District in the answer choice. So those are the ones we put on that 590.
You bring up a good question. I think the biggest piece is, do I believe there's 590 who are going to pull out? No, but that's what they indicated. And I just want to make sure the board, is it 200? And then Laura's question's a good one as well. I don't have the answer that she's seeking, but how many would leave us for another school district that may be open? And because you see stories about that as well. So I think both are great questions.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could maybe quantify that, because it's not even remaining for the rest of the year. It's next year I worry about. If we're appearing too complacent in, CDC guidelines change and we're not aggressively, fulfilling our mission to get students back in person as soon as possible, is that going to bite us in the fall by having lower enrollment in the fall and lower revenues than based on that? So I think even decisions now have those consequences.
I would agree. Other board members?
So I'll chime in. So in addition to the DOH guidelines of 6 feet, we also have the LNI guidelines, which I know you covered. I think the staffing issues are really kind of what puts us in a jam, right? Because if DOH and LNI decided to change their guidelines tomorrow, if we have a number of folks going on a leave of absence, those are bodies that it's not like all of a sudden we have an influx of teachers that move to the Wenatchee area. So that, I think, is really the limiting factor here, is that we really have to think about how do we have the staffing to teach our kids, whether it's hybrid or full-time. By the way, we are in person right now. I heard some people say we need to go to in person. We are in person. We're in a hybrid model. So I just want to clarify that for people who are not familiar with our district. We're not doing all remote. We are part remote, part in person. So, anyway, I am concerned about our staffing issues, because I know Kelly has spoke about that before, and about how that can be really limiting, even when we have a few people who are just on maternity leave. So if we have staff that's out from COVID or other complicating factors, or they need to take off because they have family members still at risk. And then I think your point earlier, Paul, about full-time may look different, right? I know that the board has received emails when the survey came out. We had some parent emails that are like, well, I want my kids to go full-time in person, but I don't want them to wear a mask all day. And honestly, I mean, this is kind of the elephant in the room, I want to call it, because we're 12 months into a pandemic. I'm tired of it. The board's tired of it. The community's tired of it. I can't think of anybody on earth who isn't tired of the pandemic. Countries are seeing surges again that haven't had surges in a while. I honestly don't know anyone who's not tired of the pandemic. So I think I'm going to put on my mental health hat a little bit here. There is such a strong desire to go back to a pre-pandemic model that when we say things like these things are going to be in place, I think it still catches people off guard. When people hear full-time in person, they want to imagine it in, pre-pandemic Wenatchee, where we didn't have to wear masks, we didn't have to socially distance, our kids could eat with their friends at lunch at tables and not have to have 6 feet between them. They could get their regular hot lunch meals and not a lunch in a brown paper bag. We all want that normalcy back. I get it. It's hard. I am not minimizing that whatsoever. It is a struggle for me, as I'm sure it is a struggle to anyone who is watching our meeting right now. So I want people to understand that that's not what we're talking about when we go to full-time in-person, whenever that is. It's again, we have to wait on DOH and LNI to change some parameters, but we really have to have the staffing. And then when we have the staffing, we have that limited space in some of our buildings. I'm just going to chime in. I had some visits last week with the secondary schools in our district, and I appreciated so much being able to have that opportunity. And I know Martin's done it as well. I'd love to hear what his experience was. But, every administrator that I talk to is really glad to see their students back. Okay. They hear the kids chattering. It was pretty kind of quiet the first week, but then kids are bubbling again. After a week or two of everybody kind of being a little bit quieter and teachers having some anxieties, that's kind of settled out. And people are happy, kids are learning, there's greater content being taught in our classrooms because the class size is smaller. There's more one-on-one instruction. And again, not just, we had heard from some elementary teachers in public comment in past weeks, but I got to hear from our middle school and high school educators that this model is working for now. So I know some people want to throw out, well, there's benefit more than risk in going to a full-time in-person model. And I have to say, I'm not so sure there is. And again, mental health speaking, I know people were using the words suicide and depression and weight gain, and I'm going to throw in anxiety there. I read something the other day that said that adults have on average gained 2 pounds a month during the pandemic. Now, I don't know what it is for kids, but I'm guessing that there's been some weight gain in some of our kids worldwide, okay? Even here in Wenatchee. We've also seen depression and anxiety increase in adults as well as kids. We've seen suicide go up in kind of the groups that we tend to see it in, which is our 18 to 24-year-olds. Those kids might be in college, but sometimes it's kids who are not in school. So we're not talking so much about school age kids. But I want you to think about those adult numbers. Adults are not in school, but their depression and anxiety has risen significantly. So I really want us to be careful about saying, well, it's because my kid's not in school full time. It's not. Our whole world has turned upside down. So please, let's not look at schools. The Band-Aid, the solution or the magic pill is not putting our kids in school full time with these mitigating strategies. It's really not. It is not going to be the solution for your child's depression or your child's anxiety. It might temporarily make you feel a little bit better, but it's not going to wipe it away. That's my prediction. I think our teachers, our students, our families have got to be asking themselves these hard questions of, we have people struggling in my household or your household or in my classroom. How can we get them additional help for their stressors? How can we help them for this pandemic? And I'm really proud of our district and how we have stepped up our social emotional learning for our students. I think it's critical in order for them to feel comfortable, feel safe, have the anxiety tamped down a little bit in order for them to learn the content that their teacher teaches them. But I don't think that pushing that to a full-time model is going to take all those mental health concerns away. It's not. Trust me, I'm a psychiatrist. Okay. Sometimes even medication doesn't do that, but just changing the model of how kids are getting it is not going to make all those mental health concerns magically go away. So, so just to go to my previous point, we have to follow guidelines, but we really have to be working with our staff. I would really love to see us start laying the groundwork now for the fall, because we have a lot of obstacles to get over to make sure that we have safe meal times at the high school. I think we heard some of our students talking about that. You know, mealtime is just one part of the day, but that's a major piece. We don't live in Southern California or Florida where we have beautiful sunshiny days and kids can eat outside all the time. What are we going to do when the weather starts becoming, you know, more inclement and our students have to eat inside? That is going to be a major hurdle. And then we have high school students in pretty small classrooms. You know, we can't do the 3 feet with that distancing. I know even at some of our elementary schools, maybe Paul, you can mention this, but and I know my kids went to Sunny Slope, but wasn't Sunny Slope one of our elementary schools where 3 feet was going to be kind of challenging for the classrooms?
We have a couple classrooms throughout the district at the elementary level where they're larger, but Sunny Slope's one of those where we would have to really think about what does that look like. But we have one or two, we have a couple across the district.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess the point is that it's not just at the secondary level where we have these space issues of, you know, the middle schools and high schools, but even at the elementary level. So just because you have elementary kids doesn't mean that you're not going to be affected. Even if we go down to 3 feet, your kids still might be having class in a gym or in another space that's not classroom friendly. And don't say we didn't warn you. So not that we want that for any of our kids, obviously. I wish that the pandemic would just be gone, but we don't have magical thinking here. And I'm glad that we've continued to follow the science, and I'm glad that we're going to continue to follow the science, but we have to follow that we have enough staffing to teach our kids, and we have to have qualified staffing. We can't just have a volunteer fill in. We can't just have a para fill in. It's not that simple. I don't think we can minimize the work that our teachers have done, not just in their training to become a teacher, but the years of experience that they have. That cannot just be replaced by a volunteer. I'm sorry. I'm not an educator, but boy, I didn't go into education because those are hard shoes to fill. So let's remember that our staffing is really one of the important pieces that if we don't have that and we don't have it right, we're not going to be able to open full-time anytime. So we really have to work with not just our educators, but our food staff, our transportation. We are just riding on the edge. It seems like from Paul's presentation, if we just have a few subs, that's really, it's going to be really challenging, I think. But let's start laying the groundwork now to kind of work with all our associations to kind of line that up to make sure that people, it's not just a comfort thing. And I'm disappointed that the community members, some of them who spoke tonight said that, I don't want to misquote, quit worrying about L&I complaints was one of them. This is not about L&I complaints. This is about following rules that we have to. And something about, I guess, the teachers not, basically not like we were we were catering to teachers, and this is not about catering. This is about people who we work with, who educate our students. So I don't think anybody is holding anyone's head over a barrel. We are trying to work with employees, and I think anybody who runs a business knows that. So please give this district some grace. We are trying to do what is right, what is safe, what is good for our students, and making sure that we have enough educators to do the job well. So those are my thoughts. I don't know if Julie, I know I had asked Julie Robinson to come. I don't know if she's logged on yet, but.
She is, but let me try to get to Martin and Maria.
Sure.
And then
Yeah.
make sure all board members have at least one opening statement before
Absolutely.
we
Thank
turn
you.
it over.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. Before Maria, I jumped ahead of you, sorry. Laura, before I open my mouth, I just want to make sure I'm on the right playing field. To me, this is no longer an action item. And so I did prepare a lot of thoughts as if it might be an action item, and I can censor a large chunk of them because they're not relevant. But this is a discussion item now, is that correct?
This is a discussion item, but that is not to say that the board won't give consensus for action.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, last week, so I'm just going to pick out the stuff that is not related to how to take a decision, but what I think is the core of what we're looking at right now. And I'll begin by saying last week I was in class as a 10th grader for a half day, a 7th grader for a half day, and a 4th grader for a half day. So I'm going to try and introduce a little bit of reality checking as to what it means. And I will be saying similar things in a slightly different way. The first place I'm going to jump to is kind of learning from a 4th grade teacher about using hands to learn how to do syllables and get bodies and brains getting oxygen and co. But I think it relates to a mindset that we've got to have. And I was going to say that you got a left hand, trying to get in the camera. That's the positive hand. There's my negative hand. And this is my what else hands, both of them together looking laterally. What the hang can we do? And that can be what we can do in the short term, working the corners, or picking up on what might be our priorities, the most important things we've got to do for the long term to be ready for the next stage. So that was just kind of a cutesy thing, but I think going in with that kind of a mindset, to me, I like talking about that rather than being creative. It's what else can we do when we talk to each other. The next thing I wanted to talk about is, I'm sure other people have got different words, learning huddles. I'll just jump to the end point. The 3-foot rule means that the only thing we do is lecture. If you watch a group of avid students around a screen or a whiteboard, they're a foot apart. That's how they brainstorm. I listened to the presentation of building representatives talking about what it meant to them, and a biology teacher described what it was like around a frog dissection. A math teacher in middle school showing students how to manipulate algebra tiles puts a finger on the student's desk in front of the desk. Now, in the small, let's be honest, in our hybrid, there's an ability to minimize that close contact and still get a lot of the animated approach. But in a crowded school, it's not going to happen. And that's before you've got to the parapro who's sitting right next to somebody who may or may not be wearing a face mask. And so we've not got to kid ourselves that there are issues to face. Now, I do think that if you have strong structural controls, then you can tolerate a certain amount of small contact. A month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months around, we will be in an environment where we are much more resistant, I hope, to problems in the disease. But let's not kid ourselves that that in full-time in school is what we did before, because if we really followed the book, all the kids would be sitting in a chair for 6.5 hours. And that's not much fun. And that's what we've been trying to get away from in education. So that, I don't mean that we've got that impasse. I mean that we've got to really think about how we put all the pieces together. And that was one of the take-home things that I got from going to the schools. I talk a lot about how to run an organization. And actually, I'm going to kind of read a question that lots of people have talked about. Oh, by the way, in the small classes, particularly in the elementary school, I saw exactly what a lot of teachers have described. I used to volunteer in 4th and 5th grade language classes, very turbulent. I would, to my way of thinking, the rate of progress and the rate of transfer of learning was double in the small class. This is something for us to think about in the future. Just as something to think about in the future is the use of technology and the whole architecture of teaching. And I'm going to get to that point later. But this is what I wrote in kind of my jargon. Is it better to scramble to salvage what extras we can find in today's engine room for the weeks to graduation? Or is it better to use time, energy, and resources to ready a more powerful engine room for the next quarter? And I deliberately was preparing myself to set something up for deliberation, not to argue a case. That's a question. But I think it's a real one. When we talk about what does the future mean, I'm waving my hands, that's good. That's what I think we need to have right in front of us. The other thing is how to achieve the best from our employees. You don't burn out employees. You try to keep them whole. Then you ask them to do more. So yes, that's very much what Paul's been talking about, but everybody else has been talking about. It's how to use the people, helping them and getting the most out of them for the students. And obviously we'd like to help the community. So a lot of what we got to do is got to be related to nurturing those resources that we've got. In the survey, I want to make a quick point. It was interesting to me that the high school students were the people least fond of hybrid in the way it was asked. They might be the people that are closest to reality. There's a big difference between them and their parents. I want to pick up on Arlette's comment. Despite huge efforts, we had something like a 20%, 30% lower response rate from Latinx and Hispanic parents than we did from white parents. So our students' survey looked like it was pretty proportionate to the actual population. Our parent survey was skewed. And I don't know whether the responses were skewed, but the participation was. And that's something that we just need to put on the fact list. So that's really what I wanted to say. I think we've got a different bunch of animals. We've got to figure out what we can do that's best. We don't have a choice right now. And every week that we don't have a choice, I think reduces the benefit we can get in the last few weeks of this quarter. I made a joke about if I had a lamp and a genie, I'd take Senator Hawkins' advice and cancel spring quarter and do it in the summer and take summer break right now, because by summer, we might be somewhere similarly prepared to where we could be for the end of August. And the community, I won't give it to you because you all know it. There's a timeline as the vaccines go out, as you get to more and more of our population. And we do cross impact with the whole population. So as we take that trajectory, we have more powerful options. We can take more risks. I personally am a whole lot more risk accepting for August than I am for now. I think that the real window for, it is a legit, I'm doing a bit more, but it would be a legitimate choice to say that if either the pandemic becomes an endemic that we haven't solved and we're living with, or we have vaccines and medical solutions that we've cured it, our behavior is going to be fairly similar. But we're not there yet, any way we look at it. But you could say, I know where I'm going to be and the risk is worth doing it. But if you do that, you better do really good risk analysis and you better be really smart about what might happen, which takes me back to a survey. Surveys are dangerous because people know today what's wrong. And when they say what I want tomorrow, they may not be aware that tomorrow isn't totally rosy-hued and they've forgotten about the imperfections of the alternatives. So that puts us in that gray area. I talk more than I meant to, actually, but I think it's a whip on our backs to figure out teamwork, how time matters, the reality check of what teaching is powerful like, what teaching's like when it's powerful, and what teaching's like when it's weaker. If it's weaker, we've got to do our best and work our way through to that. That was, you've got an earful for me, sorry.
No, you're good. Thank you. Maria?
I don't know what to say after that. I actually thank you for, stepping into the shoes of the 4th, 10th grader, and then the middle schooler. I think that definitely probably brings a different perspective sitting in those classrooms and seeing it from that level. It made me think of, so I watched the reopening video of the teachers and the staff that was posted on the web, and somebody made a comment of 3 feet at a high school is almost non-existent, not in those words, but they did bring up the example of a high schooler's wingspan. You're eliminating that 3 feet from one student to the other. And I think, we think 3 feet and kids at the elementary level, and it might be doable. However, kids grow, and high schoolers are no longer small children. They're young adults with adult bodies. So, that would be a concern if that's something that carries through. I guess I have just one more question in regards to a comment and then a question about the survey. In regards to the mental health, suicide points that Michelle brought, I want to caution us as a board and as a community that to not take another family's pain and use them as an example for our personal gain. I was just shocked that that was brought up to make of an example. A family is grieving. And then I guess my question is in regards to the survey. A couple observations were that I switched the survey to Spanish, and I have concerns in regards to how it translated. So I don't know if Martin got the chance to look at it in the Spanish version of it.
I did not. I was going to think that was a risk. So carry on.
Yeah. So it was a huge risk. And it's just, the wording is just different. So I don't know if when school staff did follow-ups, if there was any sort of clarification, but for those parents, even myself, I actually had to Google some of the way that it was laid out. My other concern about it is that I was able to click on the link as many times as I wanted to, and I was actually allowed to take the survey as many times as I wanted. And so I guess, was there a verification that that each student was matched up with an address, with the parent? So I guess that's a huge concern on how valid the data can be when it was an open link, email on the web. I went on the web. So anyways, that's a big concern for me. And how many Noah Iniguez are there in that survey with, or even, I'm not saying it happened, but the possibility is of, people just taking the survey with bogus information. I don't know. That's just out there.
And I can answer that one right now if you want. We did, we erred on the side of not requiring an authentication method because I did some work with Vancouver School District recently where they put in a model where they had the parent put in the student ID to make sure it's 1-for-1. They saw their response rate go down about 70% by doing that. So we erred on the side of having it open and then verifying on the back end. So I will be honest, we had 167 duplicate entries. So we had 167 families, whether that was through error or other means, filled out the survey multiple times. for their students. So those were eliminated, but we had to match basically by names of parents, names of students. So we didn't have exactly that. So if one household filled it out for me, but my spouse filled it out for me also, those both would count. But where we eliminated duplicate is where if Maria, if you filled one out for your student, and then I saw another Maria for those same students, those are the ones we eliminated one of those results. So I feel really pretty confident that we got rid of all of those pieces of data from the survey results.
Okay, so I mean, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm cool.
I just am looking at the CDC guidelines and also the community guideline, the community infection rates online, and I'm seeing that, you know, we were doing really great, and we've gone up in the past little bit. So we're now, according to the Wenatchee World in Chelan County, at 161.9 cases per 100,000 in 14 days. And if we were down, you know, below 120 before, which was super nice, and I wish that trend had continued, but we are bouncing back up a little bit. So the CDC, I believe, uses a 7-day testing. So if we just made the assumption that was half and half, I mean, that's probably not accurate, but we just made the assumption that it was half and a half, that would mean that in Chelan County, we would be at 80.95 or 81 per 100,000. According to the CDC guidelines, that would put us in the substantial transmission orange level. So even if we did adopt the CDC guidelines, that doesn't mean we have the get out of jail free pass, because at the orange level, and I have not studied this in depth, is that physical distancing in elementary and cohorting is still recommended, and middle and high school. But if cohorting is not possible in middle and high schools, and we've already talked about how that's a difficulty, then the 6 feet remains in place. So going the CDC guidelines is, you know, has some advantages, but it is not the panacea that's going to get everybody back in school all at once. That's the little reality check I'd like us to have.
And Laura, your point about the 2 week versus 1 week, Paul had, and I wrote down the number that you had on your slide. So as of yesterday, our 7-day rate was 110 per 100,000. So not half of the 160, but 110. Thank you.
Yeah, I knew that math wouldn't.
Yeah. So it really is actually higher.
Yeah. So then we'd be in the red zone because we'd be greater than 100.
We're in the orange based on the 14-day. We're in the red based on the 7-day. There's two measurements.
Right. But the
CDC and they're both considered high, but they're substantially high and seriously high. And we're not on the 2 week, we're not in the red. But on the 1 week, I think we're in the red because it's 100 or more.
The worrisome piece is that we're trending up. Our numbers are increasing. So that's not the great news.
A bit of information from our CDHD vaccine coordinator is, so we are actually trending up, and if our region, and I don't know how this impacts our county, if our region gets back to over 200 for every 100,000, we will be moved to phase 2, and that's going to be reevaluated on April 12th.
So can I jump in with some comments then?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out a quick comment. So I know that we've spent a lot of time talking about vaccinating our educators and our staff. And like many communities, we're not at 100%. I know that. So I don't want people to have this false sense of security that, hey, we've got 100% of our staff that's vaccinated, because if we're sending our kids to school, the reason we have these mitigating strategies is that some people aren't comfortable taking the vaccine or they can't take it for whatever reasons. But I think our community needs to know that we are not, even though we have offered all our staff vaccinations, our vaccination rate is not even close to 100%. So thank you.
Julie?
So, Martin and Michelle, I think it's great that you guys have been going out to the schools to do some of the, in the classroom observation. What is still compelling to me as a parent with 3 kids in various schools is, I wish you could spend a day shadowing a parent doing hybrid, because I think small classes are great and that's wonderful, but I'm really concerned if we want small classes to be the future, we need a bond to pass. And if we're not aggressive enough in our approach to getting students back in school, that's gonna bite us. I agree that students learn better in schools. That's why I really want my students back in school. The hybrid, they're not engaged, they're not doing anything. The teachers aren't really assigning work for them to do. They're just saying, do some iReady and some Lexia. Where they're getting their stuff is in school. So in a lot of parents' mind, and I think it's compelling that even in a fairly poorly worded survey, that most of the parents really want to send their students back because they realize, I would rather have my students, even though that's not the model we dream of, sitting at a desk with their teacher all day than in and out of the room on the iPad and then getting this really nice hardcore instruction. So that's just one of the perspectives. It's not really seen. I mean, yeah, the classroom stuff is great, and I'm great and I think small classes are wonderful. But it's not the full picture of a student's day either. And that's something that's concerning. And even though we have gotten students back into school, it hasn't fully mitigated the social, emotional, and all the other stuff. I do tend to agree that freeing up this time for students and not keeping them to a schedule is potentially detrimental for our community infection rates. When they're structured in a school, they're not working other jobs, they're not playing with their friends, they're not going out in other areas where they're liable to now. If we keep them in a safe, with mitigation strategies, and that's the unfortunate piece of the surveys, is maybe even more parents would have been inclined to send students back. And it would be interesting to know if we did get to a point where guidelines change and we can send students back before the end of the year, whether more would when they understood that no, mitigation will be followed. And I don't think there's going to be substantial difference to mitigation now versus mitigation in the fall. So if mask wearing is the concern, I suspect there's likely to be mask wearing in the fall. And if 3 feet is a concern at the high school, well, 3 feet is going to be a concern in the fall. So it's hard to find that trigger point in some ways, but what compels me is that we have survey feedback from our community that says most of the parents would send their kids back. We've got teachers that say, yeah, they may not want to go back, but most of the teachers would go back. I think even though the state has not yet adopted the 3 feet, the messaging has been get the students back as quickly and safely as we can. Inslee said, every day matters. And I take that literally. I think there's a lot of learning that can still be done in 2 weeks. I think parents are the best to decide whether disruptions are impediments for their children. And we have a survey that says most of them would go back. And right now we're facing changes every day. And I think that's just the way this pandemic has worked, is you have to be ready, willing, and able to be flexible as quickly as possible. And I think that's the mindset of a lot of families. So yes, I know it's going to be a stress on my kids, but fortunately they're fairly resilient. They're going back to sports now. So it seems odd that we would be subjecting them to a whole variety of changes in certain fields, but not this one that seems to be the most important for them and their long-term well-being. I'm concerned about this community in some ways. And this may change. We may go back to phase 2 if things are what they are. But as of yesterday, we have the capacity in most businesses to be largely fully open. my office now has capacity where I could go back to work if I wanted to. I can't because my students are at home. And I think even though it's the messaging didn't change, that, you know, hybrid, or not hybrid, but online work should still be offered, I don't think a lot of businesses in this area are taking that approach. They're really saying, okay, we can have you back on site, come back on site. We've been making up online work to keep you busy, employed there, but we really need you back here on site. That could put an extra stressor on parents who have been able to be home and working with kids, as they have students that aren't able to go back to school. And I'm particularly concerned about our lower income families of color who may be working a lot of the hospitality jobs, the restaurants that open. You know, they need to be working and may have to pick whether they want to work or stay home with their students. And so that's a concern, because I think we have a community that has really rallied behind getting business, and for good, bad, or indifferent, has really rallied about getting businesses back open and you know, getting things back to normal if we can. And so to be the only and one of the largest businesses in the Valley that's kind of pushing back on that and making it a struggle is a concern. And it's especially a concern if we want community support for levies and bonds. And I think we owe it in some way to our community that we said, hey, give us this money so that we can hire counselors and things like that. And so to send a messaging that, well, we're not quite ready is troubling in some ways. So I would like to see the momentum to keep going to get students back as soon as possible. I think our parents who are most equipped to decide whether their students can handle it have largely said, yeah, that's what we would prefer. And whether it's because it's economically they need to get back to work, or because it's, you know, I'm a parent, I am not a teacher. And that's why I want my student with a teacher all day, because they are better equipped to handle my student. And I know it's not going to be ideal. It's tough to have that stressor at the end of the year, but I'd like to just think that we finish strong, and then bring that into next year. We'll have had some real, again, this assumes guidance changes and that we have the means and capability of doing it. But I think that it still really needs to be a priority to get them in as soon as we can, because I think that's consistent with the governor's message. I think it's consistent with moving out of this. I think it's consistent with the push to get staff vaccinated, whether they chose to or not. It wasn't move them to the front of the line so they're ready for September. It was really move them to the front of the line so they're ready ASAP. And so I struggle with punting things when the mitigation may not change next fall anyway. So why delay? And we know that staff will be fully, based on that vaccination clinic date, they'll be fully vaccinated by the 19th. So why can't we move it back, you know, an additional week to give a good 8 weeks left of the school year? I think we picked the 26th, but if you look at based on a predicted vaccination calendar, but now that we know based on the 2-week inoculation that they'll be, the 19th is really it, you know, we could roll potentially sooner, again, if it's legally, technically, feasibly possible. But I think that's important. You know, you said it in the first slide. We know in-person is best for the majority of students. And there's going to be those that small class sizes, I get it, is best for everybody, but that's not the reality coming into next fall either. And so I think we need to be prepared to deal with that. And so I think the intent of some of these regulations is there, that we're really supposed to be getting them in as soon as we feasibly can and safely. And I understand disruption, but there's, you know, like I said, sports are in full swing and nobody's caring about that disruption. So I think this is a critical piece, and in a community that's really rallied behind us. And I think that we really owe it to our community to make good on our promises that we're doing everything we possibly can to get our students back in school and educated, get our parents, you know, back to their jobs, you know, doing our part.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly. I mean, you are advocating for full-time instruction. I mean, I don't think any of us are not advocating for that, but what I want to clarify is that you're not saying let's disregard the governor's requirements and the DOH and the LNI requirements and move forward in spite of those. Is that correct?
That is correct. I am not, but what I am saying is if DOH and the governor do what we think they're going to do in the next week or two, I think we need to be prepared to move. That's where I'm at, but I'm not saying that we necessarily have the ability at this point to say we're going to disregard, and that's not my intention. But I do want, if we know that it's legally feasible, technically feasible, and I understand the stress, nobody is happy with change. I get it. I am so supportive of our staff, but I want my student with you because our staff are better equipped to deal with this than I am. And we now will have parents facing real decisions of, do I go back to work because my business is now open? And there are studies that the low income and minorities may disproportionately suffer in that decision making. So I'm
Julie, I have a quick question. So I appreciate that you're saying, yes, we need to follow the governor's proclamations. We need to follow DOH guidelines and LNI guidelines. Let's say that those changed in the next week. What do we do about staffing if we have a number of folks go on leave of absence like they've projected? So let's say we have those staffing issues. How do we solve that?
Well,
that is not my pay grade, but what I'm saying is legally, technically, feasibly. That's what I'm saying. If we've got the resources, that's what I'm saying. So yeah, we can't do it if we have everybody walk off. That's why I say, is it legally possible? Is it technically feasible? Which means we can do the mitigation, and we've got staff, we've got transportation, we've got food. I don't know what creative solutions may remain out there if people walk off jobs. I'm not proposing sending kids back and having them sit in vacant classrooms all day.
Okay, good.
I think the feasibility is really the piece that we're all struggling with, is how do we make it feasible when, I don't think it's if the guidelines are going to change, it's when, it could be next week, it could be in 2 months, we don't know. But how do we make it feasible so that we have enough educators in the classroom, bus drivers for our buses, food staff to make meals? I think those are big ifs, and to be at a full-time in-person model. So I want it just as much as everybody else, but I think those are the obstacles that we have to be able to overcome as a district. And and of course we all want it, but those are tough obstacles that we can't just throw money at. We've got ESSER funds.
Well, but yeah, we've got some COVID. I mean, that's where I'm at with this. Is it's not I don't know how we make it feasible, but I want to make sure that that's the lens we're looking in, because I think there's been a lot of preference expressed in some of the comments, of staff and things like that. And so I want to understand what is actually feasible, and whether it's because we bring custodial support in on temporary contracts. It's not going to subvert our labor forces. What are the options that are being explored to say the guidelines change? How does it become feasible? And then we get to the third piece, should we? And I don't want should we to cloud whether it's actually feasible. And I want to make sure it's feasible because we've got space, personnel, whatever, but I don't want feasible to be confused with whether I want to or not.
So I think we presented that tonight.
And I thought so too. I thought we said it's feasible. We're now waiting for legal, and then should we?
I guess watching the presentation that Paul presented, there are challenges, and they're not food service, classified, certificated, transportation. Not everything was feasible. So I'm not sure if I was listening, if I heard something off. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Paul. I think one of the things that we leave out a lot is our classified staff. You got the engine, which is your teachers, and then if you don't have your wheels, which is your classified staff, your vehicle's not going to run. And so nobody is being complacent, and I think our goal is to get our kids back in school. And I think from what I understood from the presentation, that the district is working on getting there. We're not there yet, and so that we can fully open as soon as possible, but that might mean that it's not until the fall, because we are, whether it is that we have to order portables, we have to hire more. We already had a transportation issue before pre-COVID, hiring bus drivers. So for what I took from the presentation is that we're not quite there. We're working on it. The goal is to reopen schools as soon as possible. And it's not just when that 3 feet mitigation strategy is converted from 6 to 3. I don't know. Am I wrong here?
I would just say, as the presentation said, that we can do this, but the board has to be super aware that some classrooms are not going to have the current teacher in it. Some classrooms are going to have, let's just say, an intervention specialist at the elementary level who may or may not have been in the classroom for the last few years, taking over that classroom. I just want everybody, we may have admin who have to step into classrooms. And we've heard that from other school districts who've gone down this road. So is it feasible? Yeah, I want the board to know, if the board wants us to come back, we can make this happen. But I also want the board to know that there are going to be some students, and I don't know how many. We have a survey that tells us this X number. We have a survey that tells us we have this X number of staff who may take a leave. If we get into the 50s of leave, I will tell you right now, we can't do this. I don't have 50 staff who can take on. If it's 20, that's going to be a push too.
Right.
If we're in that 10 to 15, I think we can do the elementaries, but that 10 to 15, that's instructional, our instructional support staff, it's our administrators here at this building going in and teaching. It is all hands on deck. What
I heard from the presentation is that I heard that there was the potential for it not to work, but there's the potential for it to work. And we're what ifing it, mainly in the what if we can't do it direction. But we don't know that until the guidelines change and we try it. We try to set it up and we try to move forward. If we can't, we can't. But if we can't, to me, it's kind of worth the chance. It's worth keeping our minds open to the possibility. And maybe in the end, we won't be able to, but I sure would like to believe that we can do it safely, do it following the guidelines, doing it with our staff on board and feeling safe and protected, and our families being able and willing to participate. That's a lot of moving parts that have to come together, and maybe it won't work, but maybe it will.
I think we're obligated to do that.
And Laura, you are 100% spot on. We got a survey. We've got public comment over the last few weeks. The other big one is how many want to go to an online school that are currently doing hybrid, and that's going to be another shift. So, but you are so right on saying all of ours are ifs. These are some worst case scenarios. Maybe nobody takes a leave. Maybe all of our parents. But if not, that is where we're going to hit a really hard mark. And one of the things that I want to make sure, that we give people time, at least a couple weeks to make this kind of transition. So, if DOH, I hear rumblings this week, I hear rumblings next week, who knows what are true rumblings. But if we're going to try it, we do need to know who's going to take a leave. Kelly has already set up a number. I will tell you that now. Number of staff have already reached out and set a meeting. So that means they've taken the initiative to sit down with Kelly for 30 to 45 minutes to sit with people. So I know we will have some leaves. Do I believe it's 57? Probably not, but I don't know what that number is until Kelly continues to have those meetings.
We can't force people. I mean, we can say we're going to come back, but when push comes to shove, you can't grab people by the hair and pull them into the classroom and make them do their jobs. It's not realistic, and it's not going to happen. No. And I don't want that. I don't want to have unwilling workers in our building with our children. We want, people who want to be there and want to nurture. And our teachers are great about that typically, but they also deserve to be mindful of their own health and well-being. And I respect that.
Yep.
Totally.
I totally agree, Laura. This is hard for the staff to make because they do love doing what they do. There are choices that people will have to make that will play into our hands of who's going to take that classroom. That perfect timing, Kelly.
I just wanted to put out there that it's not just staff who are unwilling to do this. No. They also are parents in our school district and other school districts. And so they too are putting their parent hat on and saying, I'm not sending my kid to school, therefore now I can't come to work either. I've already sat in a handful of meetings, and I will say that that's at least half so far. It's the parent staff who are doing it on the parent end, and then it's the health conditions. Not necessarily theirs, because staff who have health conditions that can get vaccinated are doing so, but they do have children in their house or spouses or family members that have health conditions, and that's their concern as well. I've not met with a single staff member who's just like, you know what, I'm tired, I'm not doing this. I
didn't think I was saying that, because
it's more for the community's knowledge that is not why people are potentially taking leaves. Every single one of them have very legitimate reasons for it.
And I think that's fair. And I think that's to be expected. And it's what businesses everywhere are facing. But I think that's going to weed itself out and really be fewer. That's why I say, I know we're looking at 57 or something, but I some of those in that category will likely have to take leave, but it's not dissimilar from anyone else's employer that says you need to come back to work, and they say, well, I can't because of conditions in my family and whatnot. I mean, I'm sympathetic to that, most definitely. And I wouldn't expect to put anyone in a position where their, safety is a concern. But that's why, we have mitigation and it's sort of all we can do, but we can't stay closed indefinitely because of, isolated concerns here or there, because we're never going to make everybody perfectly happy in any way, shape, or form. So,
hasn't happened yet.
No. And I'm sympathetic to the frustration of having to learn new, deal with new teachers or substitute educators. But I think it's a reality of what our kids go through anyway. Teachers are off on leaves periodically and substitutes are coming in anyway. So it's not something they're not exposed to anyway, is a transition in teaching even throughout a normal year. So I don't want that to necessarily be the impediment, because again, I think we've got fairly overwhelming support by parents that say, yeah, we're okay with this. I'm not surprised to see students saying they don't want to go back. And I don't know if we matched up parents and students who would, mom or dad knows best, but,
I think you bring safety in, and I think, there's, we're talking about not just the 3 feet social distance or staffing. We're still talking about a community that is not highly vaccinated. Our vaccination rates hopefully will increase by the fall, when the fall gets around. We're talking about equity here. Our Latino community has been affected the most. And we are a young community. So, you know, last time I think grandparents were brought up, well, that can mean a lot of different things. So I think we need to put our lens, our equity lens here, and really think about what vaccinations mean for our community as a whole, and where we're at now versus where we're going to be, say, in the summer and the fall. You know, we've heard quite a bit, you know, for me, for instance, the beginning of a pandemic, one student is one too many for two. And I think we've seen those cases within our school community, whether they're made public or not, we've seen them. So, you know, we're talking about safety. It's just not about our students and our staff. Again, it's about our community, and these students are going home to family, multi-generational families, shared housing. Our housing market in the Valley is extremely high. And when we say multi-generation families, we're not just talking about son, daughter, or you know, child, parent, mom, and grandma. We're talking about 3 families in one house, 3 different families, related or not. So I think we need to put that, you know, also have that lens on, and not just assume that our community is there.
I think, and I respect that, and I agree with that, and I think vaccines will become more prevalent. But correct me if I'm wrong, I think the impact rates are about equal now between.
Not quite. It's the Wenatchee World is saying 58% of the cases are Hispanic, 41.8% are non-Hispanic.
But it's close. It's closer now. It's not as disproportionate, right?
But our community is not 50-50. Our student body is, but our community is not. I think we're still at a closer to a 40-60, if that high. So
I think those are excellent points to bring up, Maria. You know, and I think we heard some equity pieces tonight. You know, I think families have had to juggle a lot of changes and have had to make a lot of hard decisions this year, whether they wanted their kids in WIA or whether they were going to go with hybrid. And the kids who got in hybrid, you know, we know that we have a lot of families in poverty in our district. And we know that there are high school students that, you know, go to class for half the day and maybe work for the other half. You know, we have students hoping to save for college, hoping to contribute to family income. So I don't think we can discredit those changes as ways of surviving through the pandemic, as, oh, well, you know, everybody just needs to get back to school. I think those have huge impacts on family units if they're able to bring in extra income if they're in a poverty zone. So I think, you know, I wish we had more data about it, but I think we have to honor when we hear that that people are struggling, and if they're finding a way, particularly our high school students, you know, and I know there's a world of difference between elementary and high school. And, you know, my kids are out of elementary, but I've got middle schoolers in high school and I have kids in college. So I can appreciate that there are different needs at different ages, but, you know, let's honor that, you know, those equity issues, some families are trying to use the pandemic and that flexibility in the schedule to meet their needs in their household. So I don't want us to lose track of that as well. I had some questions for Julie Robinson. Is it okay if we kind of ask some medical issues about students? Does anybody else? Oh, I had a question. Thank you, Julie, for coming. And I know we rely on our community for a lot of feedback to make sure that our students are being safe. I know our students and our staff are largely not transmitting, but I know there's been a recent community event. I don't know if it was on a weekend. I don't think it was during a hybrid time, but a community event that infected a number of our students at the middle school and maybe high school level. And also I'm concerned about whether we're seeing our attestation forms being filled out, because there was a staff member that brought that to our attention as the board. So I'm wondering if you can talk about any of those issues and any other related issues regarding students and health in our district. Thank you.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Michelle. Yes, there is an increase in cases in our young people. We've been, school age kids, I meet weekly, Paul and the superintendents and the nurses and Shalane Douglas, we meet weekly. And our young school age kids have been pretty flat. And Malcolm has looked very closely at that. We meet again tomorrow, so I'm very interested to see what that's going to look like tomorrow, his graph. We are seeing an increase in cases in the last couple of weeks. So the conversation about where our trajectory is going, I can tell you I don't anticipate it. And I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I certainly would not expect that it will be lower in the next 7 days than it is the most recent 7 days. Yes, we've seen outbreaks in a couple of non-school related situations, evening events, youth activities. And there was a press release put out yesterday by the Shalane Douglas Health District. I thought on Friday they were going to identify what those were. And by Monday there was nothing specific identified. So consequently, I think we're not going to get many calls about it because nobody really knows what that means. I mean, I have an idea of where those cases have probably been related to, and we're seeing spread in middle schools and high schools. And not only were the kids at these events, but some are friends who, it's like, I talked with a parent this last week who said, oh my gosh, I just got my child tested because his best friend was doing such and such and tested positive. And he's the only student my kid hangs with. And, so now I've got another positive case. And, those are really awful conversations to have with families. But we are clearly seeing an increase in cases. And it's not school activities. And I also don't believe that those events would change if we were in full time, just because I know there have been points made that, it wasn't a play group kind of thing for younger kids or, Michelle, you watch my kids 2 days a week and I'll watch your kids because we've got hybrid going on. But we are seeing there's some troubling things from a nursing standpoint. And to be clear, there is nothing I would like more than to have all of our kids back full time. And really almost everybody I know feels that way. It's just a matter of whether it can be done safely. But we are finding in the last couple of weeks that some of our families aren't telling us. Their kids are either getting tested and we don't hear. I talked to the parent today who said, oh yeah, we tested today, but I tested her last week too. Well, and there are kids in 3 buildings. None of us knew. And there would have been implications for them the siblings being out of school. So I think parents are reticent to report. Some have already had their kids quarantined and out, and they don't want to do that. And so they don't tell us, which means we have kids that, as far as we know, they're healthy. They're not, coughing in class. I mean, if they're coughing in class or something, but maybe they take Tylenol, they don't have their headache so much. And their worst symptoms were on the weekend, but they still come. Those are numbers I can't track, but I do have a concern because I am hearing it. I've had parents who, when I encourage them, oh, my child has a fever and body aches, but they don't want to get their child tested. So then it's like, okay, well, it's hard to know when those kids can come back, right? And so they don't show up as positive. I have several families who've done that. Their kids are out for 10 days from onset of symptoms. They will not show up on our dashboard. They will not show up in positive numbers in our community because they've opted not to get tested. So if we can pretend it's not here, and I think we have families that are doing that. And yes, I was actually rather surprised to hear about the attestations, because in middle school, where I am 2 days a week, and at the tech center where I am 1 day a week, the kids have to come in with their phone on their attestation and show that they have a check mark. We've actually found that we have kids who don't tell the truth. And we find that out later when someone else is sick, but you know, they have to come in with that. That's their ticket to get in the door. But I did hear, I brought it up in a meeting because I had heard that the elementary schools were not getting that attestation. And apparently that's not a unique situation to the school that you had heard it from. I'm hearing that from a number of schools. Oh, I'm interested. Okay. So those are things that are concerning. There's a lot of talk about a fourth wave, and we're seeing that across the country. That's not a local thing. So as we're having these conversations, you know, we are going to have to pay attention to what the numbers are. And which isn't to say, I mean, I certainly, by golly, if we're not back in school full time by fall, I'm going to be very sad, because I expect we will be, and that would be my expectation. Spring break is going to have an impact on us. I mean, it seems like every time we get a handle on things, we have Thanksgiving, and then we have Christmas, and then we have, you know, New Year's, and then we're going to have spring break. And it does feel like we always seem to have some kind of a setback. And I think at Christmas time, it wasn't as bad. It wasn't what we expected. I think Thanksgiving wasn't so good. And then in January, if I recall back that far, it wasn't so bad. But I do think that people, as you indicated earlier, Michelle, people are weary of this. And we're just tired. And we have families who don't believe it's really a thing. And, you know, lucky them that they haven't lost anyone. I'm really, you know, that's wonderful. I haven't lost anyone in my family, but I know plenty of people who have. But I think because people are kind of tired of it, we're more likely with springtime, people are going to get out and not wear their masks, not socially distance, which is what's happened with our youth, you know, our youth activities. We're having events that are 100 kids or more in smaller spaces, and no masking, no social distancing. And when I get those conversations, you know, have conversations with parents, say, please, when your child is positive, if you know other students who are there, I'm not asking for you to tell names, but please encourage other families whose kids were there to call and let their school know.
Julie, can I ask you a question?
I'm just not getting those calls. Yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
I want to ask a question about testing in schools, because I don't think we've had a talk about that collectively. I see that in the DOH Learn to Return document that there's actually a pilot program for school districts to participate in testing. And I've heard also that the Biden administration is allocating funds for in-school testing. I'm just wondering what conversations have taken place at the staff level, if there's been any exploratory work in that direction.
Well, we have heard of other districts who are doing that. I know that they're doing that up in Leavenworth. They're doing it with Cascade Medical so that they can be done. I mean, we're not a lab at school, so there's some issues around us doing that. The other part of it is I cover 4 buildings, so it wouldn't be, I mean, I'm not sure how I would do that. There has been, I know early on, some concern up in Leavenworth. I think there was some reticence about it. Concern that families would send their kids to school just so they could get them tested. But you still would have to, you'd have to have documentation that allows you to do it, whatever the testing is. You'd have to have permission from parents. And we haven't really talked about it realistically, because we have had really good success with our 6 feet and the temperatures and all of that, we have not had a lot we've had maybe one case, that hasn't changed, maybe one case of at school, but kids are getting it from their parents or at gatherings and that sort of thing.
But you're saying, about kids, trying to sneak under the radar, families trying to sneak under the radar, back before the pandemic, if my kid had a little sniffle, I'd send them to school. Right. That was a different level of consequence.
It was a whole different thing, Laura. Yeah.
Than there is now. So what's our backstop? I understand that there are multiple types of testings, and I think it's even called cohort testing, where the tests are mingled and it's not specifically identifiable, but if one kid in the group has it, then you can take it further. I just would love for us to have that conversation at some level, because it seems like a useful tool, and we have worked. I don't want to put more burden on you and
Thank you.
The nurses in the district.
Thank you.
You're always already doing a lot, but we do have community partners. We've had a partnership with CVCH,
absolutely,
school-based clinics and things, and I don't want to rule out Confluence as a partner either, but perhaps it's time for us to start discussing that as an option.
We would of course have to have parent permission. So some of the same, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not opposed to looking into it and having those conversations, because we do have, I was in a conversation last week with CVCH. And we do have relationships also with Confluence.
Julia,
but we would certainly have to have parent permission to do that.
Yeah.
Of course.
Julia, I'd like to ask you a little bit more about testing, actually, because it was also on my mind. I get the impression that when testing's used, it's done about once a week rather than every day. And I saw a lot of it used in schools in England. And I read a parliamentary inquiry where they said that they wasted billions and billions of dollars on testing. And then I also read the federal government is talking about putting money into testing. So what I would really like is if you have comfort in answering this, what would it be like? Because its place would be to make us increase our defenses against quarantine, is what I would see. And also against asymptomatic teenagers who are affecting the community or going between the community and schools, rather schools being the less dangerous place, but the community being blended between the two. Anyway, do you have any information on how effective that can be in enabling you to get through more exposure?
I don't know, but I'm going to be meeting with, I can ask, I'm friends with the gal up in Leavenworth, and I can get information from her.
You can, and I assume that it would have to be an add-on, not you. We'd have to go out and acquire something extra.
I will get some information and get back to someone. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia.
All right, board. Anything else on this topic? All right, back to you, Laura.
Okay, well, I appreciate that dialogue tonight. I feel like we went deeper into it in a constructive manner at this meeting than we ever have before. And I appreciate all the board's willingness to step up and provide their insights. We do have somewhat differing opinions, and that's okay. And our, the people who spoke at the meeting tonight, I believe we had 28 people. That's quite a lot. Differing opinions there. We want to be respectful of the various opinions, but to move forward in a thoughtful and meaningful way, and make it best. The students are our priority. And if we don't have staff that are comfortable and feel safe, then we don't have a positive environment for students. So it's all, like we said before, there's many factors to consider. So we'll be watching for changes in policy at the state level. We'll be looking forward to information about testing, and we'll be going forward from there. So thanks, everybody. Next on our agenda, we have policies, and we have first read on, I'm seeing 6 policies on the list. And
all right.
who's taking
yeah, I'll take it from here, and then Maria and Michelle, please chime in. So we have 3245, which is student telecommunication for their devices. This was an encouraged one. It's revised to add language to refer to the procedure. What was it? 3241 under student discipline, and elected also to adopt the WSD recommended procedure. So we made the changes to the policy, but then also adopted in within the procedure as well. Michelle, Maria?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in that we have a pretty lengthy procedure that talks about how different infractions get handled, right? And I guess one of the pieces that was missing from specifically the telecommunications procedure was students being able to report if they had received a telecommunication from another student. So there was a reporting piece that was kind of left out of that procedure. So we asked that be put in, but I think most everything else was pretty much the same, if I recall.
Yes. Okay. 4215, this was an essential one use of tobacco, nicotine products, and delivery of devices. This is to reflect the minimum age to buy or sell tobacco went up to 21. So we wanted to make sure that our policies reflected all of that. Maria, Michelle, anything? Pretty straightforward. 4218 is the language access plan, changed to the policy itself as limited to updating legal references. So it really was making sure everything was tied together from prior work from the legislators, and making sure it was all updated.
And I think there was a piece in the procedure, right, about specifically about translation services.
Yeah, thank you.
Documented, right? So.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we actually had a really good discussion in regards to student language, the language that the parent receives communication. And so I think we're good on this one as well.
Yeah, that was good conversation on that. 5404, family, medical, and maternity leave, essential. Again, making sure that our policy aligned up with state legislators and new laws, and it was, but again, making sure everything aligned up. Anything, Michelle, Maria? Use of the school facilities, old one to update, revised in June of 2013. So this one was a lot of cleanup because it was old, but it was just updating prior work. And then the freedom of expression, we changed literally one word. That's how diligent we are on our work. We're down to the single word. Change the word of advocate to incite in the 6th bullet on page 1.
And I think that was more from our legal counsel, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you.
So that is here for first read, and then we'll come back for second at the next board meeting.
Okay. Very good. And that will be on the consent agenda unless there's significant conversation amongst board and staff between now and the next meeting, right?
Correct.
Okay, so moving along to board communication, and I'm going to encourage you to share your communications and also remind you that we still have an executive session this evening.
I have a quick one. So we attended the football game last Friday, not the outcome we wanted to see. However, I have to commend the athletic department in regards to the management of the people. There's like not crowd, but like individuals assigned to sections, and only a certain amount of people could sit in those sections. temperature checks, attestations. So everything was lined up and in full swing order. It was neat. It was reassuring. Only 23 people could sit in the section we were sitting on. So anyways, I just kind of want to commend the athletic department for those awesome mitigation strategies and complying with the DOH and with this new reopening of having crowds at our game. So kudos to them.
Yeah, it's been heartening to drive by the Apple Bowl and see kids out there participating in games. It's great. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a ledge update if you all would like to hear that. So last week was, first of all, our week on the Hill. So myself and Aurora Flores from Manson School District, who's our former WSD president, she and I got to meet with two of our legislators so far. We have our third meeting tomorrow with Representative Steele. We've already met with Representative Gaynor and Senator Hawkins, and he also said thank everybody for their service. So that's my shout out from Senator Hawkins. We get to thank them for supporting the education bills that they've supported and encourage them to support more educational issues, and that, you know, we get to do it within like a 15-minute window. So it has to be pretty brief, but it was a great experience. It was nice to get questions from them and have conversations, however brief. And then the other piece about the ledge update from last Thursday, there was some time spent talking about the governor's proclamation, obviously, because it had just come out recently, but also there was some discussion about OSPI. So we all know that there is federal testing of our students as a requirement. OSPI is going to submit a waiver. They submitted it today. There was public comment from March 16th till yesterday at 5 p.m. and I did submit a public comment for that. But their hope is to do a representative sample of students in our state rather than testing grades 3, 5, 7, 8, and 10. Their representative sample instead would be one subject area only for specific grades. So I didn't write down the specific ELA versus science versus math, but those third, 5th, 7th, 8th, and 10th graders would be assigned only one test to take. And again, it's not everybody, it's a representative sample. So there might be a handful of kids from our district that would be taking it. Now, this hasn't been approved. It was just submitted from OSPI today after the public comment period. So hopefully we'll have an update. I don't know if we'll have one this Thursday, but that would really, I know, help our educators who know that they have these coming up starting in April. Is that right, Paul? Yeah, so that's a big, we didn't have testing last year, obviously, because of the pandemic starting. And just so you know, if this representative sample is accepted, districts will not receive the information on test scores, but individual students, if they are tested, will receive their information, but districts as a whole will not be told about how their students did. And again, it's not going to be a huge number of students. So that's about it. You know, there's still bills being looked at on both Senate and House floors. The ones that passed from one house have gone to the other. Budget hearings are really looking at the impact of those bills right now. So we still have a ways to go, but it's pretty exciting. I think there's still, if you know, you still want to send support for House Bill 1476, which is about the enrollment dollars. that would be great because our district is greatly impacted by that. And also Senate Bill 5128 is another one. But we've had a couple of education bills that have already passed through both houses and been signed. So it's good news. So hopefully it will continue to be good. But feel free, if you want to send a letter to our representatives and senators and let them know that there are certain topics you support. So thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a COVID funding update under the superintendent's report. Is that correct?
That is correct, but it was in the packet, and I would more hand it over to the board if there were any questions that the board had. It really outlined CARES 1 and CARES 2, the funding dollars for the pandemic for schools, and then the third one that we're still labeling CARES 3, even though I think it's the Recovery Act. So we have those three. Just a huge shout out to Jeanette and all the work that she's doing. I really love these types of reports, and I think it really informs the board and the community as where the dollars have already been expensed, 1 and 2, and where, again, that's really early on that third round, where are we going to spend that with? So if there's any questions, or Jeanette, there you are, I found your tile. If there's anything that you want to, from a high level summary, give to the board.
I don't have anything that is not in the update. So if the board has any questions, I can definitely answer or try.
Well, it was really well laid out. I think it was pretty plain.
Thank you for doing that, Jeanette, and thank you for sticking around so long.
For that cameo appearance.
The rest of the staff as well. So we do have that in the last 2 pages of our packet. So I guess if any board members have questions about that later on, we can follow up with staff. So now, anything else in your report, Paul?
No, we're good.
Okay. The school board will now recess into executive session for a period of 30 minutes to evaluate the qualifications of an applicant for public employment or to review performance of a staff member pursuant to district policy number 1410 and RCW 42.30.110. This discussion will be closed to the public. The school board is not expected to take final action following the executive session. So
Your normal 5-minute break.
5-minute break, and then whomever is in charge of the controls, please make sure that we're turned off of streaming for this portion of the meeting.
So Kim, if you would turn off the streaming piece, I'm not able to do that, not as a host on the Zoom. I'll do it on YouTube.